World of Warcraft, as we all know, has been always primarily a girl's game. And anyone who disagrees with this obviously truthfully historic statement is a chud and a Nazi. You wouldn't want to be one of those, would you? Of course you wouldn't. We're all civilized people here. But little do they know, I'm Hitler's best guy. Okay? These things do not concern me in the slightest.
World of Warcraft is one of the most tragic victims of the modern gaming industry that brutally mishandles legendary IPs and turns them into shadows of their former selves. It's a textbook example of you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. In its foundation,
The they-them villain, thank you very much.
Warcraft established a certain look or aesthetic for itself that made it really stand out in a sea of other titles in the fantasy genre. Most notably, despite their clear influences from other games, the races of Warcraft had their own flair about them that you could...
Yeah, they were all giant, hot, sweaty dudes, and in a situation that was not the case, it was very nice outfitted women.
...only find in Warcraft or WoW. However, over the years we have seen a devastating shift in tone, writing, and art direction that have turned...
What do you not like about the literally quadruple crippled, half-elf, half-black woman that's a very special person? Also, she's royalty. She actually is technically like Azeroth's most royal bloodline or something like that. You know, she's the queen of they-them humans. Okay? And that's not, by the way, a joke. She literally, technically, is like one of the oldest descendants of the king and queen bloodline, and she obviously teaches Anduin how to be a man. Ah, modern World of Warcraft. Isn't it just awesome? I love the inclusivity. Don't know about you, but I love it, okay? She also has one arm, if you're wondering.
WoW from this vast, gritty fantasy that did have a bit of whimsy here and there to a full-on Disney-fied version of its former self. Today, I want to talk a bit about how WoW lost its uniquely Warcraft identity, focusing mainly on art and aesthetics, and just have a...
This is a 20-minute video that honestly could be summarized in 5 seconds just by showing a screenshot of modern World of Warcraft writers.
Bit of an honest discussion on what exactly went wrong and why it matters in the context of a changing, out-of-touch industry that has plunged many legendary franchises into an identity and aesthetic crisis. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelica, and this is a video that I have been building up to for a while. It isn't a new discussion, but it's really important to me as somebody who grew up with Warcraft.
By the way, there were a lot of people who were pretty angry with her for saying the obvious, brutal truth.
Warcraft, and I am probably the way that I am because of it. Now, previously on this channel, we have had several in-depth discussion on the races of Warcraft and certain aesthetic and tone shifts that have fundamentally changed how they were even from Warcraft 3 to Vanilla WoW, or even some things that have straight up ruined everything that was unique about a particular race. It hits hardest with the Night Elves, as we have seen, where they went from these savage men and women who fought with a brutality that even the orcs couldn't believe to, please don't hurt my twee. You can check this video out if you want to hear about it in more detail.
Yeah, that's kind of true. The savagery of the elves. I mean, the elves literally come from the trolls. Which, by the way, is considered new lore in the current actual retail version of the game. Everyone's like, oh my god, the trolls and night elves share a common ancestry. Yeah, no shit, the elves came from the trolls. What do you mean? Yeah, we know. and the writers at World of Warcraft are treating this like some kind of mind-blown revelation because they retconned it for the 5th time. It's great.
But for me, this has sparked a wider discussion on where exactly WoW lost this brutal Warcraft essence and how did we get to these Disney vibes. Honestly, you don't really have to do any in-depth analysis to see that there is a massive difference between even these images here, as if they come from totally different universes. Everyone looks so bubbly, kind. Even the rougher options for faces look so soft and clean. It's missing that bit of spice that we saw with older models. And this bubbly, well-rounded and smooth kind of look really goes for how the rest of the world looks as well. Some people suggest that this is just the natural way that it progressed with these newer models, but I would argue that it definitely could have taken a different way if they wanted it to. Just look at these unused human models and how much they resemble their Warcraft 3 selves. There was already a shift in tone from the start of vanilla World of Warcraft, but at that point it wasn't anything too egregious, even though it would have been nice to see them explore this particular look for humans. A more intimidating, sharper look, and something that made them stand out from humans in other fantasy games. Warcraft 3 was a defining game for the overall look that made WoW so great. They established a very interesting balance between the masculine and the feminine that worked in harmony to amplify one another. By this, I mean it tapped into the side of fantasy that is effortlessly, universally appealing. Strong, believable characters, flawed, but each—
Well, isn't that honestly the problem in modern day society? That universally appealed and known things are just wrong or supposed to be wrong because they're all old and nothing old is right?
with their own personalities and their own motivations when it comes to the greater fight for the good of their own race or whatever cause they support. A very mature approach that gave
Hashtag Arthas did nothing wrong, okay? The purging of Stratholme was necessary. You know it, I know it. It's not even a bad decision. It had to be done.
a lot of room for growth and a future for Warcraft. It reminds me of how The Lord of the Rings, particularly the movies, are so appealing to literally everyone. They never needed to overcompensate in a way that a lot of modern games and fantasy in general tends to do nowadays. For example, did you know that in total, if you take all of the main female characters and put their screen time together, you don't even get a full hour? And despite this, The Lord of the Rings has a massive female fan base. Then we can look at the Rings of Power and how they
Can we not?
massacred Galadriel's character to where she's no longer a strong, wise elf, but an
What do you mean she's not a strong, wise elf? Did you know that she defeated? Did you know that she killed a frost troll in 3 strikes? Did you know that? Did you know that? Okay? Did you know that orcs are just migrants that want to have raised families? Did you know that? Did you know that? Did you know how deep Galadriel's inner thoughts go? For example, why does a ship not sink when a stone does? Do you know why does a rock sink while a boat doesn't? I mean, you cannot exactly go a lot deeper than this. Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable slander.
insufferable girl boss who behaves like those main characters from the Disney shows. Everything feels over-exaggerated, overplayed, and unnatural. Warcraft had a place for everybody, not because they had to fit someone in to meet a quota, but because the world naturally formed in this way. In the RTS, for example, the Night Elves, despite being such a wild and brutal race, are actually a matriarchal society, and little things like even the in-game call
Well, women are really good at committing war crimes, that's true.
callouts are done with a female voice, as opposed to the other races that have male voice callouts. Modern WoW has a lot of flaws when it comes to writing, but particularly female characters feel so forced, unnatural, and like they're—
Look at what they did with my girl Sylvanas. She was my favorite, still is technically. But she was my favorite character in World of Warcraft, and then they completely butchered her existence. Sad.
motivation doesn't come from a genuine place, but instead it's all just sort of performative. Sylvanas went from the tragic survivor of the Lich King, the powerful Banshee Queen that unified the Forsaken, to a cartoony villain. The rest of the writing across the world, coupled with the cadence with which female characters speak, is just— it's Disney.
Is that?
Thoradin's Wall? Yes.
Then the stories and legends I read as a child were true.
This is an infamous example. The way that it
She gonna You gonna yeah, she does.
It looks like a poorly made machinima from the early days, and to be fair, even
Nice.
those looked better.
Dinath fought to save all of Azeroth. He sold us out so the Alliance and Horde could wage war in Khazalgar. You'll never understand.
But it's that overplayed
Oh.
style of narration.
You know what's the best part about this? She literally kills people, innocent people, and blah blah blah. And at the end of the day, you're like, okay, you can leave now. You're a woman. Okay, it's fine. Don't worry about it. When a man does the same shit, he and his fucking family get executed.
That is used to tell you about history that is somehow relevant to the plot. The shades that she's wearing are
Her story.
also kind of throwing me off. We get two supposedly strong female characters here, but their dialogue is so poorly written and it's delivered in such a strange way that I can't help but just cringe at it.
I mean, to be fair, they come off more masculine than this day them.
There was talk about this sort of thing happening a lot, not just in WoW, but in other games in general, in an attempt to make games more appealing to women. This is the industry's idea of what is supposed to be appealing to women. A corporate-brained...
I talked about this in my review of the current retail situation, but this is very true. And the point is, the too long didn't read of the whole World of Warcraft situation is Blizzard started losing the old fans that once made World of Warcraft great, and then they decide that they need more people to play it, obviously. And then they decided to use the untapped power of the, well, turns out 50% of the gamers in the world are women. I have somehow not met these other 50%, which is very strange, but I'm sure they're real. And Blizzard decided to completely forsake the game literally to just get a bunch of women in. And granted, it worked. They probably doubled or tripled the amount of women that play this game from, I don't know, like 5% to like 10, 15. But the thing is, if you ever actually talk to a woman who plays World of Warcraft that's retail, you're gonna get a very interesting slew of answers. Do you like the game? Yeah, kinda. Are you interested in the story? Yeah, kinda. What's your favorite part? Arator. Why? Because he's hot. This is gonna be, by the way, a universal answer that the only part of the story that women actually like is Arator because he's hot. And now even that is kind of changing because he cries too a lot. And a man that has emotions is not a man, it's a woman, obviously. You see, I'm very progressive. See? You see? Men are women if they show emotions. That is called progressiveness, okay? It is what it is. Do you like the current way the story is going? Kinda. Do you think it's cool that the evil is not evil and good is not good? Yeah, kinda. All of these answers women that play World of Warcraft are gonna give can be summarized with they're fine with what's happening, but ultimately they don't care because they're not invested. They're fine with the way the game looks. They're fine the way the story is going. They're fine with everything, but ultimately they don't care. Because they're not invested truly. They could actually play World of Warcraft Classic as long as it had the customization options of retail. That's kind of how the game actually functions. And Blizzard completely ignores this.
Group of people that never really had interest in video games to begin with came up with this. An out-of-touch entity that has all of the power, but none of the creativity to bring Warcraft back to its former glory. Why is it that in order to appeal to female gamers, we need to infantilize the dialogue and the writing to Disney levels? Things like this are straight up insulting to everybody's intelligence. I wonder how it passed quality checks. Is there nobody there?
Because there's no one there, yes.
That listens back to this and says, hey, maybe this is a little bit silly. This is a little side note that goes beyond World of Warcraft and shows you just how much the industry does not take female characters or female gamers seriously, and how much they misunderstand us. A recent example is God of War Laufey, which is such an unfortunate thing for me because a game along the lines of Heavenly Sword or a God of War game with a female protagonist does sound like it's something that would appeal to me, like I would be the target audience for that kind of game. But when I watched the showcase and heard
Oh, look at it! It's Grogu! It's Grogu! Don't you like Grogu? Everyone likes Grogu. Come on, it's a Grogu! Here's your own Grogu! It's Grogu! You like everyone likes Grogu! God, I hate life.
Of her dialogue and what she was saying, I felt confused.
Okay. I think they're gone.
Just be careful. Where are we anyway?
Afterlife of the gods?
Absolute
I
Disney.
call it the everyone. So, what's the plan, boss?
Not your boss, Frank.
Why does she have to be so quirky, and why are we so afraid of
Because she's Lechungus, obviously.
or
The modern writing, if you haven't, one of the most interesting actual things about modern day slop writing is a very on the nose yet amazing fact. It's the thing that you cannot be serious. These people don't understand seriousness. They are gonna have a moment that's supposed to be serious, but they can only make that moment last 2 or 3 sentences, and then they're gonna have a Lechungus, big Chungus moment where everything yet again is meaningless. Because they can't. Like, these people have some kind of strange twisted aversion to actually having serious moments in anything. Everything needs to be like followed by a comedic line or something. Break the tension, even though the tension has not even been reached.
embarrassed by a true fantasy setting where people speak and act like they would in a serious, mature fantasy setting? Why is there a gelatinous cube named Frank? Where in Greek mythology did we have something like this? The creation of these cartoony girl bosses or quirk chunguses show that they don't really understand.
She actually said also Kirk Chungus is based, absolutely based.
And what made other fantasy titles so popular with female gamers. Look at things like Skyrim or even Elden Ring as like a really small example. They are games that are just completely themselves. Every character fits naturally into their setting, there is no unnecessary comic relief to make female characters more relatable or less awkward, and there's no Disney-style over-narration of events to make sure that girls will understand what's going on. Those games are just good, and that is why everybody likes them. You don't have to overcompensate at every turn with cute and whimsical characters to get girls to play your game. I'm gonna say something, and it's that performative male feminism has majorly contributed to the industry's skewed and out-of-touch view of female gamers. When this sort of thing receives any bit of criticism, you'll have the white knights come out and say, oh, weak men, fragile masculinity, you hate women if you don't like this sort of thing. Okay.
I absolutely love when people say this, because the reality is they have said this so much, everyone knows that it's not accurate, lies, and stupid to begin with, that none of this matters. All of these, oh, you just don't appreciate women's writing because you're evil or something. Like, who fucking cares? Who cares? You think calling me evil now is gonna change anything? You have called me worse things 5 seconds ago. You think this is gonna change my opinion now? You think you can shame me into subsiding? Giving up? No! No! Go fucking sit while peeing and fuck off.
If you take actual incels out of the equation, which nobody really takes them seriously, the truth is that a female protagonist isn't the problem. If that were the case, so many massive franchises wouldn't have even been half as successful as they are. The problem is with modern developers that will take a legendary, well-established IP and use it as leverage to sell
Please show Fable. If you show Fable, I will marry you.
their own games with mediocre writing. Let's be honest, nobody would buy this if it didn't have the World of Warcraft label on it. We should not be focusing on the extremes that deflect from valid criticisms and concerns when it comes to things like this. Nobody who's normal has any real problem with a female game protagonist, but we also shouldn't reward mediocrity just because the protagonist is a woman. Performative male feminism has been incredibly damaging to so many studios, including Blizzard, who did have a lot of
I mean, we can just simplify this to feminism.
skeletons in the closet of their own. in real life, but
Bobby! I told you you're gonna regret when Bobby's gone. Now you wish Bobby was back? Sacrificing a stewardess once a month is not even a big deal at this point, huh? I told you you're gonna regret Bobby leaving. I told you he was the damn. And now what? Bobby's gone? And the franchise is fucked? And I honestly don't think it's savable. World of Warcraft can't be saved. The direction that they're going constantly is just worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
they thought that it would be reasonable to turn women into fruit as compensation. I've asked this before, and I will ask this again.
Well, technically, I do agree that perceiving women as inanimate objects is kind of based, but you know.
What message does this send about women's bodies, especially in a mature fantasy setting? It's hardly a children's game, if we're honest. I mean, most of the people that are playing World of Warcraft, at the least, would be in their mid-20s, but I'd say the average is like 30s, 40s, and above. And this is just part of the overall problem, but going back...
A lot of the people that I know that play World of Warcraft at this point either have a family or want to have a family. It is what it is.
Back to modern or retail WoW. When the harmonious masculine and feminine elements of the game were neglected, toned down, and stripped back for a more family-friendly version of the game or something that would appeal to more people, it resulted in a kind of a theme park look or feel for the game. You try to make something that appeals to everybody, it then appeals to nobody. There is the added issue of too many things going on at once. There are too many races, there are too many flashy mounts and toys, too many shop items, and it all creates visual noise.
Yeah, everyone looks like a Christmas tree.
This is the backdrop, but in the foreground, the way that the characters are animated, how they move, how they run, cast spells, etc., is so overdone, and for me, it plays like some cartoon or something that isn't really that serious. I think it's important to note just how impactful this change is. We went from these more grounded and down-to-earth animations.
Bro, this is a thing in every game. It's actually very noticeable in card games that have animations for cards, by the way. This becomes super noticeable if you have played a card game. When a couple of very specific cards have an animation of something happening, then that feels really special. But the moment inevitably all the cards get their fancy animations, everything kind of feels just dull and boring. And this is what happened with World of Warcraft spellcasting and animations. The big stuff no longer was differentiable from the small stuff. Everything was maximum bloom. And when everything's maximum bloom, well, nothing really matters.
To the more over-the-top variety that perhaps because of what I'm used to feels very unnatural and frantic. Recently, WoWgrandor did a video about why WoW isn't immersive anymore. Just on that conversation, a lot of these new locations with the latest expansions
Jesus Christ, she's from the WoWgrandor age. Holy.
me are a little hard to appreciate.
She wasn't joking about about growing up with World of Warcraft, eh?
With just how much is going on. It's not that these places aren't beautiful. There is a certain charm there, but I think that World of Warcraft is a game that
There is no charm here. There is literally no charm in this city. It's an aberration to everything. This is one of the also problems that I have talked extensively about World of Warcraft in general. You somehow have people who make these zones from World of Warcraft who have never literally been outside the city, so you kind of understand that they will fuck up outside designs. That they will put a fence or 15 trees in a place there's no reason for a fence or 15 trees. They're going to oversaturate it as hell. And yet these same people who have literally never been into even to a suburban area of a city, only in the deep concrete jungle, somehow make something like this that doesn't even function as a city. Silvermoon is a shithole. It doesn't make any sense. This thing is just random. It's confusing, and that's it. There's no urban planning going into this thing. It doesn't make sense. Like, it's just confusing, it's large, it's stupid, it's boring, it's dull, and it just has this giant veneer of that this is supposed to be special. You know what's the only thing that makes sense in Silvermoon? This bridge right here. And the fact that it has this small fucking island with the beacon or whatever this is. That's it. That's it. Nothing else makes sense. Nothing else about Silvermoon's design makes any sense.
Benefits from minimalism where possible in terms of world design. It is so much easier to get immersed in a simple, dark forest where the environment is made up of limited but effective components that get across how you're supposed to feel about this place
True.
and what it represents, as opposed to these massive, overblown, overly detailed locations where your eyes kind of don't know what to focus on in order to properly appreciate the setting. It's kind of a shame for the better designed parts of the game also, because this just completely clashes with it and takes away from any good art that's created in modern World of Warcraft. Just completely overshadowed by silliness and a general lack of direction. I think that the true Disneyfication started with Draenor when they had the catastrophic change in character models that all but wiped the core identities of many of the races of Azeroth.
I would say it's Pandaria, where the world design just started going purely to shit.
But as time went on, I think that the Disney element was melded together with a Fortnite element. Fortnite was a massive and game-changing influence all across the industry, especially with their specific approach to monetization. What started out with a simple skin shop and then turned into the Battle Pass where you could additionally earn currency, later grew into something that featured all kinds of things, including celebrity cameos, TV show cameos, cameos from other games. So when you go into a Fortnite lobby, everyone is just some different looking thing. There is no rhyme or reason.
And since Fortnite was played primarily by 12-year-olds, you know what's the funniest thing? In the peak of Fortnite, my cousin's kid, I should probably say, was, I don't know, like 11, 10, 12, and he played Fortnite. And he was talking about the skins, and I don't remember what I asked him, but he said, "Oh, in school you're supposed to have a unique paid skin, or you're gonna get made fun of." Yeah, this is why Fortnite was successful. They somehow made kids bully each other for not having a paid skin.
No harmony, but for a game like Fortnite, this is fine. It's a battle royale. You're in, you're out. It's not that deep. I don't think anybody really cares about Fortnite lore or keeps up with it unless they're like 6 or 7 years old. And to me, that's what a lot of World of Warcraft looks like now. I think transmog was a good idea at its conception, but also with all of the quirky cosmetics and things that don't really fit Warcraft in its original sense, cities and hubs can now look a little bit like a Fortnite lobby, just with all of the flashy mounts, new races, and everything else in between. I think Dragonflight was the next major Disney-esque blow to Warcraft, something that really pushed it over the edge.
Dragonflight was a joke, Jesus Christ. Dragonflight. Do you know what Dragonflight is about, by the way? It's about just a bunch of different queer and gay dragons establishing themselves. That's it. That's literally the oversimplified version of what's happening. And this is not a joke. Dragonflight had multiple gay storylines in it. Dragonflight was literally about reaffirming self-identification, and not the classical ID sense, but in literally the beginning of Dragonflight is because I tried to level through this zone once, and I almost Minecrafted myself. Too bad I didn't, honestly, looking how that turned out. In any case, the beginning of this is literally you just establishing a cutesy base camp where everyone can look at the stars and shit. Then you meet the dragons, and the dragons are like one-dimensional personalities. One of the dragons is like, "I'm gonna sacrifice myself for the dragons," and the other one is like, "No, don't." I'm not kidding. Those are literally personalities, full-blown personalities, because there's nothing other than that in them. It is disgusting, ridiculous. The dragons are super inclusive, by the way. You know the guys who literally were like, yeah, we're the red dragon flight. We don't exactly appreciate this plague shit happening, so we're just gonna, kinda minor exterminatus the Ratgate, okay? If you're dead, it is what it is. Friendly fire, whoopsie doopsie, everyone's dead. Okay? That was the dragons previously. Now they're literally big chungus Disney freaks.
Into a more immature fantasy setting. People often misunderstand why there is still such a great appreciation for Warcraft in its earliest iterations, or World of Warcraft from vanilla to about Wrath. But it was just that no matter where you went, even if people were wearing mismatched gear, as you do while you're leveling, you looked like you belonged in this world. Old World of Warcraft is so loved by that side of the community because it's a game that has more than just gameplay going for it. You have gameplay at the center of everything, of course, but beside that you have lore, compelling storytelling, a sense of scale when it comes to the world, adventure, a unique identity and aesthetic, and of course the overall added bonus of nostalgia. You really cannot compete with nostalgia. For retail WoW, it feels like you just have gameplay, because the only good things I ever hear about retail WoW is only ever just related to gameplay.
True. I said that. Pressing buttons in World of Warcraft retail is fun. Everything else is sad and bad, but pressing buttons is fun. And my hottest take, by the way, here is the fact that retail World of Warcraft is actually not even in a lot of cases harder than classic. Yeah, that's right. There are tons. Pretty much every class is designed by with pressing 2 buttons in mind. And then maybe off cooldown 1 more button. Okay? And every class has their 1 minute cooldown things that you're supposed to cast. For example, Fire Mage are literally 2 buttons. Yes, just Fire Blast and Pyro Blast when you pop combustion. Other than that, it's a little bit different, but pretty much the same thing. Frost Mage is the same thing. Arcane Mage is literally 3 buttons. No, actually 2 buttons. 2 buttons. Rogues, Subtitry Rogue is 2 buttons. Combat Rogue is 50 buttons, so no one plays that. And a lot of classes are like that. Frost Death Knight, same thing. Some classes do have these 15-second cooldown things that you're supposed to press on cooldown pretty much. But other than that, nah. It is, the rotations are almost are just 1 button harder than just spam Frostbolt, if you can believe it. And raid-wise, I did all the heroics, except much on Quell and Us. That was my first time I have ever done heroics. I did it solo, easy, not raid finders, but looking for raid. Wasn't hard at all. In fact, from the 7 bosses I did kill in heroic, from the Spire and the Dream, 5 of these bosses were easier and had less mechanics to worry about than, for example, Katoon or Ragnaros in retail. Not retail, but in classic. I'm not kidding. Most of these fights are literally just AFK. And honestly, for example, the last fight of the Spire or Throne or whatever it's called, When I did it the second time, everything was so solved, everyone knew where to stand. So it was literally almost like a classic fight. Had a little bit more, you needed to jump, and that was hard, but it's as simple as classic. Okay? And buttons feel good to press. They have done a tremendous job at that.
I know a lot of classic versus retail discourse is around the difficulty level of the game. Some classic players say retail is too easy, and retail players argue that it's not. And to be fair, I actually can believe that retail WoW would be quite a bit more difficult. Early WoW was pretty simple if you think about it, and
I went in expecting it to be difficult. It was not. I went in, I expected retail to be hard. It was not. Again, it was not.
Unless you're playing hardcore, it's not really that hard to get through the game. It takes a longer time, sure, and I think maybe certain parts of the game are harder than they would be in retail, but overall, when it comes to even the end game, I do think retail probably does have more challenging elements to it. I have been told that I only dislike retail WoW because I'm just not good enough to play it. And here's what I'll tell you. I just don't even have an incentive to try. I don't want to try to be good at it. It just doesn't look like the kind of game that I want to play. A lot of it's just too smooth and polished, and it really...
The amount of lore they have given these stupid, annoying freaks is insane, by the way.
Polished, and it really feels disconnected
Commander,
from its
a
roots.
massive...
And to me, those are the things that are important. And in talking about this and in making videos like this, I have found an entire community of players like me that find value in the exact same things, and for the exact same reasons they cannot or they do not play retail WoW. I don't know what's going on in the lore anymore, and you know what? Nobody does. This was a major discussion in the community recently. Nobody has any idea what's going on. They've written themselves into a corner. We're probably gonna get like a ton of retcons or time travel or something, just like Mortal Kombat. The best thing that they've done recently seems to be housing. Everybody loved housing, and I'll be honest, I look at...
No, the reason you love housing is probably because you know a disproportionate amount of females because you are a female. And females do love housing. I do not know a single man, actually, that has cared about housing or even done housing. On the other hand, though a lot of women have done that.
it, and based on the kind of games that I play, I would probably interact with this and enjoy it quite a lot myself, but it's just still...
And again, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, because housing is literally, again, just a mechanic that was intended mostly for women. Again, World of Warcraft is not giving up on the femalification also of World of Warcraft. Again, who are the heroes currently in World of Warcraft? Women. Who are the evil guys? Guys. Yeah, that's right. Can women be evil? No, they're just misunderstood. Case in point, Xalatath, the current big bad of the series. She's probably not gonna get killed. She's probably just gonna become our friend or something by the end.
Not enough of an incentive for me to want to come back to the game overall. There is such an unfortunate stigma around people who prefer classic WoW literally just for the way it looks. Do you know how many times I have been called a chud gamer for talking about this? What do you want me to say? The chuds yearn for storytelling. They yearn for...
As the children yearn for the mines. True.
Lore, for gritty, dark fantasy with some whimsy here and there. A simpler time when the game didn't feel so...
By the way, this is also something I don't agree. People are saying this is whimsy. This is not whimsy. This is just a distinctively different type of cultural architecture of the elves. That's it. This is not necessarily whimsy. I mean, you can probably think it like that because it's, you know, more trees and technically supposed to kind of be peaceful and whatnot, but this is not, I would never call this whimsy. This is just distinctly different.
A simple time when the game didn't feel so but let me tell you something right now, I have the solution. No, it is not to play Classic WoW. Those servers have a bunch of issues. We'll wait for Classic Plus. I'll keep my mind open. The solution, ladies and gentlemen, is to reject corporate slop and embrace tradition. If you are watching this video, then I am telling you right now to go and install Warcraft 3 Reforged and go back to playing a real game. Not just the campaign, but the real Warcraft 3. Go watch a grubby video, go watch Happy playing a tournament, go learn a guild order, and just get in the game. It has to be reforged, so we cannot escape all of the corporate slop, but you can toggle classic graphics and immerse yourself in a real, brutal, gritty Warcraft as God intended. Oh, but you like decorating your house in retail World of Warcraft? Go build a base. Like a man, or a woman, some burrows or a ziggurat, whatever you're into. Go play a real game that still holds true to the roots of one of the greatest game franchises of all time. And then 1v1 me on the ladder, if you aren't chicken. But on a serious note, I maintain that everybody should be able to just play whatever they want, even if it is retail WoW. There's clearly still an audience for it. And even that audience, by the way, already has a lot to say about the
I think that audience is just constantly dwindling. Because historically, what has happened with World of Warcraft is quite interesting and telling. Because the moment the graphs started going down and Blizzard could not get them to go up, they stopped showing the numbers. Remember, was it 2-3 years ago or 4 years ago, something like that, where the graph suddenly moved up again and Blizzard was like instantaneously, the graph went up, and they instantaneously showed us the numbies. Yeah, so the graph is just constantly moving down. Otherwise, they would show the graph as a good and positive thing. It's again, it's just a corporate thing. Numbers bad, don't show graph. Numbers good, do show graph. It's not that complicated, honestly, sometimes.
And various other issues with the game, but in keeping with our previous discussions around the aesthetics of Warcraft and just the overall legendary vibes that we got from it that just weren't recreated anywhere else ever, this was an important video for me to make, and that's why I made it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this little ride through the Disney-fication of Warcraft. If you did, please consider like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. As always, huge shout out to my channel members.
Okay, absolutely great. That was mommy. I mean, my wife. I mean, Angelica Cook. Angelica Cook. Angelica Cook. Anyway, my wife. 10 out of 10. Have a nice day. Bye.
She's gonna be like, "Well, hello, yeah, hello there, young man. Would you like a picture with me?" Expose myself. I'll just show her my pee-pee, and I'll be like, "Look at this, honey. Look at this." these
Give it
nuts.
repositioning. Tactical
How you
sweep
like
taken.
this banana?
Point secure. This is adjust your positions.
Our new undisputed champion is none other than Sami Zayn. But I bet he never thought his own mentor, Triple H, would be the reason he's ended up with Reigns. And a few other things, but I didn't know he was a handyman too. Oh. Why you say that, Bobby Monsoon? Because it seems like he's about to screw Sami Zayn out the championship. And as far as his career, it's about to be the with the jobber Gargano while he's planking. Then out of nowhere, he was thrown into a super threat match with both of Cody Rhodes and Snyder. And because it was in Saudi Arabia, it made it great. Now he's put himself into the corner once again because no matter who won, it was going to be bad. Raheem retained, he would have had to sit through another boring time. Another Stell title reign for them. So I guess the best we had done. A lot of people are speculating that Triple H was just screwing Sami Zayn over the title. The winner will face Sami Zayn on Raw. Cody Rhodes beats Reigns, and now Cody Rhodes and Sami Zayn in Chicago in a few days. Yay! This is crazy, man. Sami Zayn was so happy to win the title. He even took him and the title out for coffee and paid for both of them. Then he took the title out for pizza, but unfortunately he couldn't afford one slice for the title because of TKO 50% pay cut. That was impossible. He even spent a little time with his new best friend, Jobber Gargano. And he took a picture showing the world how happy he was. Now I'm starting to think maybe he wanted to get as many pictures as he could because he was coming at first. I didn't see Triple H like this. It happened in less than 2 weeks, but a lot of people think otherwise. CM Punk will be coming. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. CM Punk will be coming back to Raw on Monday in Chicago, and he won't be feuding with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins because they're obviously heading towards SummerSlam to face each other. So WWE has a problem today. It's been talked about for a very long time, and it's about the show. They haven't built literally any new stars. They don't have nobody for CM Punk to deal with. Sami Zayn versus versus Punk for the Undisputed Championship. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. Do you think Triple H is going to have Sami Zayn fight the title of Raheem on Raw, or do you think Sami is going to make it to SummerSlam? Williams went on ESPN and explained how wearing his white mink coat became a thing. He said Triple H and other WWE management got him wearing the all-white coat all the time. Now, when he first came out with the white coat, it was fire, man. It was definitely fitting for his character wearing the all-white. But after seeing him wearing it last night on Crackdown, I think it's time for him to hang it up. No pun intended. Now, I don't know if bro decided to take a dip in the pool with the jacket on or if he's just deciding to use it as a towel when he gets out the shower. But either way, I don't know how much longer this coat has before the fur acts like a bad student and starts dropping out. Dog, I think my man Joe Trev said it perfectly on my live yesterday. WWE has turned Mr. Lemon Pepper Steppers to Mr. Lemon Pepper Feathers. This is crazy. The $3 billion of debt must be killing their budget, dog. You can't get my man a new mink. I heard that Trick was gonna ask him, but he decided not to. Subscribing, hyping, everybody in my lives multiple times in the week, all the people in the chat. I want to thank everybody, man. Y'all really helped the channel grow. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Why do you say that shit now? Back to the content!
Tarkus brothers claim it for the chat.
The African-American nightmare, Raheem, talking about a whole bunch of nothing. Raheem, of course, needs his title back so he could get the record for the most boring title reigns of all time. Jey Uso needs his title so he can make his Roman Reigns happy. This was trash. Segment. This is what I'm talking about, y'all. Sami Zayn, bro. Look like a champion. You know something called the it factor? You just don't got it. I'm sorry. Dude is a legendary wrestler. First ballot Hall of Famer. Toured the world. Had crazy bagger matches. Had unlimited knowledge you can give about professional wrestling. Not everyone has the it factor, dog. If you wasn't in bed with Triple H, I guarantee you would never be good. If you got Sami Zayn with the champion, you should have the whole night. Because Nick Aldis got fired. I'm making you defend the title against the winner of and everybody in the crowd is like, wow, I can't wait. No one cares. You're in Atlantic City. Nobody cares about this segment. Wait for the same painful things you do in Atlantic City. Walk the boardwalk, go to the beach, hit the casino, hit a hotel, get some funnel cake, hit the
Beast. Bring it
came
down.
out of the blue. Maybe this is back out of the blue. And that's where the from. Trying to holler at TLC. Somebody's left dying chilling. And man, this couldn't have been more fitting. What? The name Chili, because this segment, this match, this whole storyline is ice cold. this new faction you put together against TLC. And when it's all said and done and people say TLC was a failed faction, it's not because these three women wouldn't work good. They actually have good chemistry. I can see good potential out of TLC. I like TLC. Crazy Sexy Cool was one of my favorite CDs. I just don't like anything they have booked for them. Once again, I watch this show every week. I can't tell you guys anything about this storyline, dog. I don't know what I'm watching. I don't know what they're doing. I think it's... I can't even begin to explain this garbage that I'm seeing on TV. Jade Cargill wins from doing the Jaded, the Chelsea Green for the 100,000th time, whatever. I'm so sick of seeing Jade Cargill do the same move to Chelsea Green. It's just like, God, can we book something different? Next we got Ray Phoenix going over the guy Viking. I'm sorry, guys, if you don't know his name, I don't care to look it up. I think his name might be I apologize. This is WWE's fault for putting Ray Phoenix back down on those storylines. This is WWE's fault for putting the Viking on here with no storyline. This is WWE's fault for making us care about a AAA Cruiserweight title. That dog, this is literally the last thing I can care about on this show. Like, how did AAA even sleep on a crackdown? You have people backstage that's playing. You got Alien Dragunov, Rising Catering. You got like a million other things you need to be doing with this show before you go to AAA, bring this to Crackdown, and give us another lifeless open challenge. I am getting open challenge to death. It was a great match. It was a banger. It was a 5-star banger. Great. The problem is it's no creative. It's no storyline. It's nothing to connect to. It's no emotion. Why would I care, bro? Good match from these two. It's not y'all fault. It's creative fault. Next you got my man, Trick Williams. Finally going into a program from the 80s. You know what I mean? Outside of y'all heard me alive, man. I wonder what's going on with Trick Williams' jacket. Outside of that, Trick Williams is my man, bro. He's doing everything he needs to do on his end. It's literally WWE setting up the booby trap, putting him in a trick bag. So there's nothing to do with Trick Williams. It's the creative, man. Carmelo Hayes, Trick Williams. This is what we need at SummerSlam, bro. They're gonna put on a banger. These two know each other very well. This has creative. This has storylines, dog. All WWE has to do is put in a little bit of effort. I'm gonna put it over, bro. I just want them to fight back some way, bro, to AEW, because my God, they're getting the brakes beat off of them. Trick Williams slap Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes get his get back and flip outside the ring. This is what I want to see. I was watching the good. Carmelo Hayes didn't do anything after he back. He goes through the flip. That's a great job. This is probably the number one thing I'm excited to see on this program. Trick Williams, Carmelo Hayes. I know I've been asking for a while. I know these two is gonna deliver. Next, you got a bathroom break of a match. Laney Reed and Brie Bella. Laney Reed goes over. I would be lying if I told y'all that I was there. I see. Oh, wait for Laney Reed and Brie Bella. This is nothing but a bathroom break. I'm sorry, dog. I'll be lying if I told y'all that I know everything that happened, every move that happened. To be honest, I don't even know the end of the match. A bathroom break means you get up, you go to the bathroom, you probably pop some popcorn, you probably get some coffee, put some ice on the face, and try to wake up because it's yours to sleep by the time you get back to the TV. And fatal influence, under the influence, whatever they're called, was walking out to the ring. I apologize. I wasn't interested in watching this crap. This is a waste of time. I'm sorry, y'all. Just reviewing this show is making me tired, dog. The last match, the African-American Raheem going over Jey Uso. We don't care. This match was boring. It was a lackluster. There's nothing to it. Dog, this whole show is trash. It's serious. It's a disrespect to Atlantic City. It's a disrespect to anybody watching this. I would really suggest that, dog. If you just, I don't know, dog, I just wish someone could help book this show. I didn't even mention the Dan Housen, that whole thing. God, this is like bad, bro. Nothing about this is remotely funny. Nothing about this is like captivating. I can't remember the last time something happened on Crackdown and I was like, oh, I can't wait the next week. I can't remember. Let me know in the comments what you think about this stupid show. Monday's Raw. I guess we're getting Punk back, so we'll see what he's doing for SummerSlam. And we'll see if Sami Zayn's gonna drop the title Monday or if they try to call it all. Let me know in the comments what you think about that.
Inside. Adjust your positions. Enemy unit. Another enemy crushed. Quick! That is easy. Target destroyed.
How can we serve? We move again, brothers. We will take it. Brothers, claim it for the
Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 20 in a 20-part series I am doing covering fan-favorite chapters of Space Marines in Order of the Legions. Do you need to have seen the other parts to understand this one? No, but it would make me happy. Fellas, in a discussion of what is considered a fan-favorite chapter, there is a lot of conjecture in terms of options. Though there are quite a few I would consider quite popular, I think it's sometimes best to go back in time and start from our roots. A lot of people get into 40k at different eras of time. Sometimes they get into it when there are new editions, like with 8th edition. Sometimes they get into the game with the rise of a popular video game like Space Marine. In today's discussion, we will be talking more the latter than the former, and that is involving Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War. It kicks so much ass, it's actually embarrassing to see how far the franchise has fallen. It's crazy to note how bad the more recent games are in that specific series, or even the side games are, but if you want my feelings, just a quick lightning round here. Number 1, love it. Number 2, like this. Number 3 is incredibly boring. As for side media, Warhammer Mark of Chaos is so stupid, it's actually physically painful, but it's also really, really fun. And then Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Ruin, was so mishandled that I feel the person responsible for its release when it had like at least another year of development necessary for that content that the game should be tried in the egg for how to filter what the game. But regardless of contribution to 40k is any piece of media that Dawn of War added to the universe of 40k is in no hyperbole probably one of the most significant events to happen next to like the release of Space Marine 2 and maybe the release of 40k 8th edition. So, having recently replayed the game for fun, I realized something. What the f*** is this? This is not Alpha Legion, but apparently it is Alpha Legion, but also, when you play the game, they do the most meme Alpha shit I've ever seen, but also they do a lot of shit that just completely interferes and goes against what is the pre-established canon of 40k, goes against the whole rules of the setting, and the entire game as a whole is just bizarre when you look at it from as opposed to the Alpha Legion after we have the context of, well, you know, about a decade more time to understand what the Alpha Legion are. So, I wanted to make a video to cap off this series doing something a little bit different, discuss a game that I'm quite passionate about, quite enjoy a lot, and give a brief plot synopsis, discuss the modern war of the Alpha Legion, and then give a reason as to why they are so There is one-off things in this game that I don't think have ever been mentioned in any other section of 40k media ever. If you're gonna watch this video and rethink about the lore being something that was more with this managed, rushed out, and didn't have time to correct the lore, or you're going to adjust your sunglasses by pushing them over the bridge and popping the collar on them, just simply saying, by God, y'all believe it. No, we're going to do just a quick dive into the modern lore of the Alpha Legion, so as you set the stage, then we're going to do a flat synopsis and go for it. Regardless of all that, before we hop in, get what's in Gamer Subs. Okay, it's Gamer Subs time. Oh no, get back here, you will consume the juice. It's yummy, low calories, and also really cheap. Okay, so now sit down and listen about how tasty this cherry limestone mix is. It's quite literally one of my favorites. I mix a scoop of cherry limestone with a sweet six-pack, and I call it the Bricky Surprise. The surprise is how both have different brands of Goonerific art in the front, but regardless, I think the flavor is sweet, not too tart, and downright juicy, and it's something everyone can like. So if you want to ride the flavor and if you need to stop holding me hostage, then you should click my link in the description down below and use code BONEZONE at checkout for 10% off your order. It helps the channel and it means I can stop breaking into people's houses and sell juice products at affordable prices. Thanks again to Game Substitute for channel as always, and don't worry, I have no time. So before we discuss anything on juice, let's do a brief refresh on the Alpha, especially on the Alpha Legion or the Traitor Legion during the Horus Heresy. You may, or may not, have basically just done what they wanted instead of doing what the Traitor Order wants. There is a lot more to it than that, and I feel like me going at it from that standpoint does too much, but that's not the case. They sided with the Traitors and did a lot of actions that led to the Loyalists being bolstered and even having resolves more or less sealed for the oncoming assault that was going to happen, which for some reason, coincidentally, the Alpha Legion did not contribute in the fight for Terra. So, it is a bit odd, and it did give them a bit of a reputation for being kind of playing both sides against the middle. I personally have the feeling that they are neither 100% foolproof as people think they are, nor are they as succeeding. So, I think in a lot of these instances, it was literally just them being a little bit stupid and just subterfuge not actually mattering. But I am also, like, at least 30% sure it was potentially a ruse to fool the traders that they were actually just idiots. I'm not 100% certain. The only thing we don't have is a reason for them doing what they did. One thing that we do know is that, to some degree, one of their Primarchs is probably dead, and their other Primarch has either assumed the mantle of Alfarius, or they are also dead as well, and there is no Primarch left for the Alpha Legion. It's a bit complicated. The Alpha Legion does have a tendency during the Horus Heresy, and earlier than that, to refer to themselves as Alfarius, and they use other people for uses. Or no, this is time as much as fans would like to assume. Now, the Alpha Legion or none of them refer to themselves as Alfarius, which is really cool. But much like other creators in 40k, when you destroy the command structure of what they have in Great Heresy, they tend to trickle down into small war groups, which just tends to happen. And you had people previously create as captains, centurions, or whatever weird-ass snake-themed rank that the Alpha Legion tended to give their commanding officers, staking their claim as leader of a small fiefdom, and then being like, hey, I am the bestest that there ever was, and I'm the coolest snake that ever lived, so therefore I now own this specific warband of people, and, you know, if you start glowing and shooting snakes out of your hands like Spider-Man, but from a fucked up universe where he shoots snakes out of his wrists instead of webbing. I had a joke here, but I lost it. I'm sorry. I genuinely, my train of thought just crashed midway there. But regardless,
that is a
if
delaying
you
tactic
see
at
these
best,
warbands
Commander.
pop up, it's because a Centurion staked their claim and now owns just a group of 100 to 1,000 Marines, and they're just going around doing raiding shit. But with the Alpha Legion, it's a lot weirder. They don't go around doing things without reason, and there is a theory that there really isn't any actual warbands, just warbands pretending to be warbands, as they are all acting as one big legion still, but accomplishing independent goals. See, when the Alpha Legion shows up and it's not from their perspective in the story, you tend to see some shit that makes you really goddamn paranoid. I would like to remind you that there was a moment in a very recent storyline that the Alpha Legion massacred an entire town of wannabe priests and an ecclesiarchal training facility, leaving only one priest alive after seeing him and simply saying, nah, that's the guy. This guy would later go on to inherit a portion of the Emperor's spirit and save Robute Gilliman's life from Mortarion during one of the most important battles in the Imperium's history, which, yeah, I can guarantee you the Alpha Legion saw this shit coming. They have a thing for seeing the future, and that's also incredibly suspicious that no one brings that up for some reason, but it's not like I haven't brought this up about like 20,000 times on this channel, but regardless, I think that the Alpha Legion in the modern lore is often overstated but underestimated, while also being overestimated at the same time. Subterfuge from the perspective of a Space Marine is impressive, yes, but you also have to realize that Space Marines are a lot smarter than most people give them credit. A Space Marine can think as good as any other Space Marine, and I can guarantee you an Alpha Legionnaire is not the smartest Space Marine that's out there. Other Space Marines can outthink them, and even still, they can be thwarted. Everybody is fallible. All humans are fallible, and to some degree Space Marines are human. So you can't trick a Space Marine 100% of the time, but that being said, the Alpha Legion does operate on another level. Another way to understand their chapter, or their warband, or their legion, or whatever they are, because they could be loyalists, or they could be heretics in any way whatsoever, they're weird, is to note that they do operate in small sleeper cells a lot of time, with singular Marines, or maybe small pods of Marines, recruiting humans, and even brainwashing loyalist Marines to operate under code words that would activate them to perform a specific task. Now, sometimes they will take loyalist guardsmen and then just brainwash them and usually brand them with the tattoo of a serpent in order to show their allegiance to anybody who will attack them. But individually, this is a very important tactic because it allows them to spread out their influence more so than just having garrisons of Marines. They could just slowly infect and have these pinpoint strikes from Marines that would just detonate, or pinpoint strikes from guardsmen that could just set off explosive charges at the utterance of a phrase. This is why the Alpha Legion are seen as a bit of a meme and seen as a bit of an odd Space Marine chapter, as they don't really operate like any other Space Marine. They operate as sort of a loose-handed, poisonous strike. They don't bleed you out quickly. They don't go for the throat. They simply inject you with the slowest time-release poison possible. Though, one of the phrases that a lot of people tend to use with them is they're going to bleed you dry. It will take a long time, but they will bleed you dry. In a long-term engagement, they are probably the most annoying Space Marine chapter, or warband, or legion to go against, just because you never know who they are. See my Alfarius video to understand why they're also one of the scariest chapters to go up against. Regardless, this is kind of all the basics you need to know. They are an espionage, they are an infiltration, and they are a weird subterfuge style of chapter that tends to get the job done in ways that normal Space Marines usually wouldn't. So now that you have a basic understanding of them, we can go into a brief plot synopsis of Dawn of War. Dawn of War 1's story is pretty simple, but very well executed. I think one of the reasons why it's so popular is because its story, although again pretty basic, is just very well done. It's a little hokey, and there's maybe 5 voice actors amongst the entire cast, and all of them are playing multiple characters. I do have a fun little aside involving Sindri that is very unique to me specifically, but we'll get there. I promise. We'll get there. But I'm just gonna try and sum the entire plot of this game in like 10 to 15 minutes, so be patient with me. The story of Dawn of War is literally the most red thing I've ever heard, and probably all of you have ever heard, that where they basically just attempt to get every available and popular faction involved in tabletop games, sales involved in the story to some degree. And in the first version of Dawn of War, you have the standard Space Marines, Fluoride, Orc, and Space Marines. The plot is simple. On the planet of Artemis, the Space Marine chapter is called the Orcs, these local guardsmen. Support law that it sort of just snowballed out of control. Think Armageddon, but they're probably not winning this one. Your focal point in time, when we look at Gabriel and Stoics, Steely Boys Marine, who is the captain of the fresh off the war, being exterminated, long road of Cyrene. He is well as his best friend and elder brother, Isidore, a librarian from the chapter. The orcs, led by... No, this can't be it. I refuse to believe that is the name of this beauty, man. You are correct. Led by Orcamungus, who is intending to get into the biggest scrap of his entire life, as well as his entire army. See, that's the main plot for a third of hey, there's that. Space Marines fixate on shooting as many green skins as possible, but there is something horrible about the skin. It turns out the Alpha Legion that I mentioned before is specifically a very chaos-y version of the Alpha Legion, are on Tartarus and have in fact bribed the Orca war boss, Orcamungus, and I'm not getting over that, with as many weapons and pieces of armor as they can stomach to distract the Space Marines, the Guard, and so on and so forth. Well, the Chaos Space Marines look for a very powerful Chaos artifact, led by the Chaos Lord Vale and his sidekick, a Chaos Sorcerer by the name of Sindri Mir, who are both voiced by the same guy, who, by the way, is also the voice of Dinobot from Transformers Beast Wars and Grumpy Bear from Care Bears. Isn't that just wild? But yeah, Scott McNeil has a lot of conversations with himself in this game, as he is kind of responsible for maybe a third of the voices in this game, but whatever. Once the veil of secrecy about what's actually going on is dropped and the Space Marines find out that the orcs are just a distraction, the Eldar show up. Who the f cares? You find out that there is an intensely powerful demon artifact on this planet. Who would have thought? Tartarus, a prison? For something terribly evil? Crazy. The Alpha Legion are trying to get it for some reason. Eventually, as the plot progresses through trials and tribulations, an Inquisitor shows up mysteriously, I mind you, to tell them that there is a warp storm about to consume this entire planet and leave them basically stranded here for over 100 years. So, everyone needs to leave and soon. But we are not here to be pussies. We gotta deal with whatever demon artifact known as the Maledictum is before we head out. Thus is the Space Marine Code. Oh, by the way, your brother Isidore, yeah, he gets corrupted by Sindri the Chaos. Pretty much minute one of Isidore hitting the planet's surface, he was just getting whispered in the ear to betray the Blood Ravens in order to use the Maledictum to fight the Emperor until they not get corrupted by Chaos. Totally. Sindri and Lord Vale perform rituals unknown, but here is where she gets weird. Sindri eventually turns his back on Vale, having no but he then proceeds to chant chaos ritual magic spells for Khorne, the Blood God. A sorcerer is chanting a Khorne magical psychic ritual for Khorne, the Blood God. Okay, that is to be discussed. But basically, there is a chaos greater than Khorne stuck inside the dictum that Sindri, who's apparently related to Khorne, probably Chaos Undivided, but it's very weird that he chose Khorne this one time, wants to break open for favor, fortune, and what have you. Which is also very interesting to think about. Sindri is basically the final antagonist as he kills Isidore, after Isidore does some honestly pretty cool monologuing about how the gods recognize his strength because he's a very powerful, I don't know. Isidore, dead, killed by Gabriel, very sad. Sindri pleased Khorne so much and absorbed so much power from the Maledictum, that's also just a magic chaos rock, that he became a demon prince, which is odd. I'm like 90% certain that Khorne hates Psychers, but whatever, let's ignore that for now. With the combined might of Gabriel Angelos, captain of the Third Company, the Imperial Guard, some inquisitorial help, with the Inquisitor giving Gabriel a magic demon hammer by the name of Godsplitter, which is an awesome name, he was able to banish Sindri the Demon Prince back into the warp and secure the Maledictum, of which, under much scrutiny by the Eldar, but you know, when are we not being scrutinized by the Eldar, he was able to smash it to pieces with the hammer, which was a bad idea, actually. Because due to the death of Sindri and a bunch of every other person that died within the weird bloody circle that the Maledictum was in, the demon inside, instead of being killed, was actually free. Basically, he just released a bloodthirster into reality that shouldn't have been there. The Blood Ravens get off the planet, vowing vengeance on that demon who tricked them, and they do pretty aptly. You know, few sequels to come. Everyone lived happily ever after, except when the third game hit, and then everybody hated it in the end. Okay, that's pretty much everything you need to know. I probably just made fans of this specific game's head explode, but you know, we had to rush through it a little bit to get to where I'm talking about. Before I get into the wrap-up of this video, here's some fun Arthur lore. I actually met Scott McNeil in person at my local convention and got him to sign my 8th edition Chaos Demons Codex as Sindri Mir. It's kind of cool, which would have been cool on its own, because he's actually a very charismatic and very funny individual who was born with a cowboy hat on, but I'm just gonna let you know it didn't stop there. Basically, after every single time me and my friends go to the specific convention, we go to a local sports bar and just kind of shoot the shit and talk about what we did. Lo and behold, the Grumpy Bear himself walks in and recognizes most of our group and then comes to sit at our table, and he just starts sharing stories about what it's like living where he's at. He has a couple drinks in his hands. Dude is just honestly really cool. I was kind of starstruck at the time because he just was such a down-to-earth, very cool guy that I'd never really met him. Yeah, this dude was pretty damn real and pretty damn neat. And when he left, so he kind of tried to commit to it. Another fun fact about this is he was also trying to learn the local accent, which is one of the more unique accents you'll find on planet Earth, as it's a mixture of Acadian French, Scottish, and alcoholism. So hearing him practice was really funny. Regardless, Arthur wore out of the way. You know the story of Dawn of War, and you probably have some questions about what I just recited to you, and most of that is pretty insane, even by the standards of the Alpha Legion being able to accomplish some weird shit. There are some inaccuracies in there, but we'll cover that in a second. But let's just get into the actual reason as to why it is weird in this final section. The idea as to why this is weird shouldn't really come to a shock to most of you. It's like looking at a gray sludge bubbling in a cauldron in some RPG you're playing. The shitty, almost gray brownishness and consistency issues of it isn't really what we're here for. It's really the flavor that we're after. I'm interested in finding out and sticking my finger in this and goes back just to a skeleton, you know? So when you take a spoonful of it, the funny part is about the Alpha Legion in this was that it weirdly enough tasted like a half-decent chicken pot pie. Surprising, not exactly fantastic, but also mostly just confusing. Firstly, the Alpha Legion in this game have dropped all pretense of the fact that Chaos Wars lunatics obsessed with the growth of their own power. Outright killing servants and slaves that displease them or just for funsies, which, considering a lot of the lore states, a lot of the Alpha Legion kind of keeps the chaos on the down low. It's a little weird, but it might just beat these guys being weird. Then you have them somehow being able to parlay with an orc war boss long enough for them to actually get a functional and mutually beneficial deal going on both sides. That's kind of nuts, which makes me question if it is in fact possible for you to negotiate with greenskins. Like, I know they only want to fight, and if betraying you would mean they get a better scrap out of the deal, then they would likely do it, but the idea that the Chaos Space Marines of the Alpha Legion of all people would be able to get their foot in the door, let alone convince the orcs to do something that they didn't truly want? Kind of lunacy. Secondly, the fact that they had almost zero stealth or espionage tactics throughout the game, aside from Sindri Mir being the ultimate second gas holiness. No, I will state him being what he was kind of on brand, yet for some reason, he just proved to be the most Alpha Legion-y character in the entirety of the setting at this point. It made up for pretty much everybody else being screaming berserkers, but, you know, he was able to magically seduce an entire brigade of Imperial Guards to fight for the side of the Alpha Legion. He's being able to psychically flew with Isidore, who was part of the craft known for having a particularly strong psychers, and being able to also make a pact with Korn, who notoriously hates psychers, which, you fellas, let's, key in on that a bit. The demon stored in Maledictus was a bloodthirst. Cool, right? Make a deal with Korn to release it, but Korn hates psychers. That is the domain of Tzeentch, after all, which makes a lot of sense, but here is the thing. Somehow it still works, with Sindri unironically chanting blood for the blood god in the game, which usually is an immediate death sentence for anybody who can't bench to place, which is kind of what psychers are known for. Regardless, this somehow works, and Sindri gets the blessings of the gods. I assume that the gods undivided. No, it would have been really, really interesting if we turned out completely bright red and became a full-on Korn. I would have a few others. The level of wacky hijinks that happen in this game is so against what the game sees as possible in the Alpha Legion, as I think that we need to take kind of a step back and breathe in a deep breath and realize that this shit is just really cool. Yeah, sorry to kind of mess with your headcanon, but dudes, the Alpha Legion are a Chaos Trader faction for a reason. And honestly, this is probably the most have of them in the modern day as such. Are there other reps that have come out since? Yeah, but I always go back to this one, as I kind of love people arguing that they're secretly not Chaos Marines when you have Lord Vale over here and his glowing neck. Yeah, he's pretty chaotic. I like this game, and for a lot of people in the fandom, this game is kind of a milestone creation, you know? It's literally the game that got quite a lot of people into 40k initially back in the early 2000s because of how fun it was. It was simple. There was no major characters to focus on. There was Giant Ministry, you had like Gabriel Angelos, but he was just basically a normal Space Marine captain as far as the and he was just a really cool character. But I don't give a shit about the superhero mega characters. I have quoted the Dreadnought dialogues in this game so often that it is almost concerning, though all of us have looked up, and if you know the dialogues I'm talking about, you get it. I think we hold on to this idea of the Alpha so much that when you see them be Chaos Marines, it comes off as an absolutely bizarre sight, which I will state, the whole Horn Sorcerer thing is quite bizarre, but you know what? They do their best. I think the Alpha Legion Warmen in this game are pretty cool. I think they are one of the reasons why I have always had a healthy respect for the Alpha Legion, as it's kind of my first time being exposed to them. They are weird because they break a lot of the rules of 40k. They are weird because even when they break the rules of the canon, they do it in the most Alpha Legion way possible, while also resembling the least Alpha Legion style of warband that they possibly could be. Anyway, let me ask you guys something. Do you guys have any particularly fond memories of the games? Let me know in the comments. Weirdly enough, I have played them way later into my career of playing 40k games than I probably should have, considering it's such a landmark game. So I want to see what you guys have to say. Special thanks to my channel members for supporting me, and if you wish to support me and support the channel, and make sure let me channel member today. It pays my bills, keeps me fed, and also keeps my editors from turning into a dried up desiccated husk. So that's cool. Thank you all again for watching. Before I go, if I may, one thing I always wanted to talk about, but never truly understood until I had to replay this game, was why I hated the Eldar, and having replayed this game in preparation for this video, I realized that my hatred for the Eldar started here. Follow me, walk with me, talk with me. I just want to say that the Eldar in this game fucking suck. They suck a lot. They suck so much that actively playing this game makes me hate them more, and no, this is nothing to do with the Eldar Warlocks being weak, except that with very little balance involved. It has everything to do with how they act during the storyline. Hold my hand a minute as I gaze lovingly into your eyes and tell you there are so many problems the Eldar could have avoided if they just spoke fucking directly in the game. It pisses me off. Literally, most big conflicts could have been avoided when Farseer Fears over there just decided to show up, and instead of being very around the bush, they just said, there is a demon in that funny looking rock, we would like to keep it in the rock. But no, they had to beat around the bush the entire time and trust that they knew better. Man, I aerial assault because of this game, and this feels horrible. I know it's a me thing. I know who I am. I am almost uncomfortably direct with people when I have to convey important information, and issues I have with them are usually dealt with quite promptly. So when I deal with someone who won't cut to the heart of the matter, when there's quite literally the entire world at stake, I get a little pissed off, and feed off Pancreas no work. I don't give a shit if you like the Eldar. I'm still beating 2-0 in our little old world Warhammer escalation league, so you can't say shit. But yeah, you're just waiting to field stronger tomb things. Oh, you can't get any of your weird scorpions on the board right now because they've been sold out. Yeah, such is the power of Nagashmo, and such is the power of my nutsack. Destroy them. Destroy them. It is done. Move on.
Victory is but a prelude to the next battle.
The Eldar return to the sector could not have come at a worse time, Commander. As you suspected, the House Vandis militiamen who ambushed you at Argent Glacier were not an isolated band of malcontents. More Vandis rebels have risen up against Imperial authority on Meridian. The Retribution will take you there to provide support. Governor DeRosa will have further details for you when you arrive.
What of planet Aurelia, Captain Angelos?
Jonah, I'm reassigning you to the Commander's strike force. You will all return to Aurelia once the crisis on Meridian has stabilized. Angelos out.
I still do not see how these rebels could have imitated a Bloodraven's distress signal. The codes and rights for using our relays are among our most closely guarded secrets.
Our chapter hides far more than its communication rights.
Perhaps, but someone knew just how to draw us into that trap.
thank you for your intervention, Commander. The Emperor's favor is clearly with you and your battle brothers. It is an honor to serve alongside the heroes of Typhon.
Commander, Governor DeRosa here. Insurgents loyal to House Vandis have launched a sabotage campaign here on Meridian. Our infrastructure is still crippled from the Eldar and Tyranid attacks, and the Vandis... Commander, this insurgency has stretched our loyal forces to the limit. Orc looters have infested the Hablocks outside Angel Gate, and I can spare no troops to stop them. Only you can eliminate these Xenos before they reach Angel Forge.
Dexter is a show that had a premise even better than Breaking Bad, but it never reached the same heights in acclaim or popularity. The writers had everything they needed to make it prestige TV. They just lacked the courage to push the boundaries. Here's what I mean. Breaking Bad pulls a narrative trick on its audience. It starts with an innocent protagonist who's been chewed up by life, faces death by cancer, and has no financial support for his family. Naturally, such a start makes you root for Walter White. Then the writers peel back layer after layer, season after season, until the protagonist becomes more Heisenberg than Walter White. And the audience starts doubting themselves and their own morality, forever rooting for him. An intriguing premise executed amazingly. But I would argue that Dexter has a much better premise, but sadly the writers never quite pushed its boundaries much. We start with a protagonist we know is a killer, but we root for him because he's a net positive for society, exclusively hunting other killers who've hurt innocents. We shrug off the fact that he's an anti-hero and start seeing him as a good guy protagonist. With a premise so good that it already has viewers rooting for a serial killer, the natural overarching narrative should have been more for the audience to gradually start questioning not just Dexter's morality, but their own for actually rooting for him. However, the writers were either too cautious or just too in love with their own creation. So instead of using that premise and crafting a complex characterization, they spent 8 years protecting Dexter from anything that might force the audience or the character to grow. And if you're here for popcorn TV, more power to you. The show is entertaining, but it just could have been so much more. Let me walk you through the moments where the writers had a chance to make this prestige TV and blinked. Season 1 is as good as it gets. An exciting premise, not your usual run-of-the-mill protagonist, the second-hand gratification of Dexter ridding the streets of serial killers. I mean, come on, how could you not love this show? I will admit though that there are still issues. The whole long-lost brother arc comes a bit too soon, but whatever, let's not actually. Season 2 is where the writers pop out blatantly. Now, the Doak situation has been discussed countless times by fans and YouTubers, but I'll just add something new to it, I promise. Let's start with just how compelling the narrative is at this point. Dokes figures out Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher and confronts him, following which Dexter locks him up in a cabin. Dokes is, of course, the external conflict here, but Dexter's also facing an internal conflict at this point, Harry's code. It's proving to be inconsistent in this situation. The first 2 rules of the code, which are also most relevant here, are A, don't get caught, B, don't kill innocents. Now, here's what I haven't seen a lot of people do. The code was put in place by Harry so that Dexter avoids such a situation, such a confrontation like Dokes. And so, in this conundrum, the first rule of the code has to be justice. This is the point where Dexter has to break the code and kill Dokes in order to not get caught. But after all of that wonderful, tense buildup with a perfect moral dilemma at the end, the writers just fumble it horribly. Instead, we see Dexter deciding to frame Dokes as the Bay Harbor Butcher, which is just the worst plan ever and honestly would just never work. Something the writers knew very well. Also, if Dokes gets the needle, hasn't Dexter killed him anyway Okay, but more seriously, once in custody, Dokes is going to spill all the beans on Dex, which means he too gets caught sooner or later. So the only real option that also works as a great narrative is that Dexter questions him, then decides the first move, and kills Dokes. A moral dilemma that ends up changing the moment of his character, forces him to question himself, question Harry's code, and struggle with his inner conflict. But the biggest missed opportunity here is that it would have forced the audience to question their own morality. Ask themselves if Dexter was good or bad for society, if they were going to continue rooting for him. The writers had an opportunity here to show Dexter for who he truly is. A killer with principles, yes, but a killer nonetheless. Whether the audience wanted to continue rooting for him or not, the perfect moral dilemma, exactly the kind of moment Breaking Bad put all of its characters through all the time and didn't shy away from its natural progression. It's really just what made Breaking Bad so great. Look at Jane's death in Breaking Bad. Jane is a threat to Walter, and she's also pulling Jesse away from him. The moral dilemma for Walter comes when Jane starts choking to death in front of him. At this point, he's still not yet Heisenberg. So, what does he do? Help Jane and keep himself vulnerable, or let her die and get her off his back and also get Jesse back? The writers don't make Walter actively kill her, but they do not make it clear that he makes an active choice for self-preservation when he lets her die. And in doing so, he does end up paying the price for it. In a meta sense, it fractures his relationship with the audience. We start seeing Walter in a different light, a far more negative one. It has a massive domino effect within the Breaking Bad universe too. The audience has to stomach that and sit with it knowing full well it's a consequence of Walter White's choice. This moral dilemma and Walter's way out of it creates an inner conflict in the minds of the audience and adds another layer of tension and intrigue. It draws you further in, gives life to the characters. In contrast, the writers for Dexter choose to protect Dexter and keep intact the audience's perception of him. That is what makes Breaking Bad compelling even on rewatches, while Dexter fizzles out pretty quickly. But here's the part that frustrates me the most. Dexter breaking the code would make for such a compelling narrative, and since they didn't do it here, you would think that the writers were saving it for later, right? And while it does happen in the very next season, it's another ways of life. Dexter ends up breaking the code by killing the wrong man. That's it. That's all we really get with him. Jimmy Smits put in such a great performance as Miguel Prado that I missed a lot of weak writing on the first watch. I loved Dexter and Miguel Prado's friendship when I first watched it. Dexter finally had a friend he could actually confide in instead of just performing humanity as he does with pretty much everyone else. But actually rewatching the season made me realize Miguel's character arc makes literally no sense. Here's a distinct attorney who's passionate about putting criminals and killers behind bars and doesn't mind bending the rules to do it. But when the legal system fails him, he takes matters into his own hands. He wants to do what Dexter does. Honestly, a fair and compelling character development so far. But then to go from having a misplaced sense of justice to someone who kills a professional rival is a massive jump, and one that has to be earned by the character over multiple episodes, conversations, etc. But just look at how casually Miguel murders Ellen Wolf after a single conversation with Dexter about why she deserves it. Like, there's no hesitation, doubt, or inner conflict for Miguel. He simply flips from vigilante to murderer. Then from that point on, Miguel rapidly devolves into almost a cartoonish villain. The character just loses all nuance. The situation goes from gray to plain black and white. The writers had to turn Miguel into someone unquestionably evil, and do it quickly so that Dexter once again has no moral dilemma in killing him. The writers do a lot of mental gymnastics. They want him to be a genuine character, so that his portrayal gives Dexter a moral dilemma and emotional stakes to deal with. But then they also retcon the whole relationship with the cow blood master manipulator move. What that does is it clears up Dexter's path to a moral kill while also making the audience lose its sympathy for Miguel. Now what's frustrating is that Miguel is Dexter without the code, without the ethics drilled in by Harry. It's honestly a great mirror to Dexter himself, and we could have had Dexter once again grapple with his morality. That's until the writers turn Miguel into a cackling cartoon villain so that Dexter can kill him without a second thought and go back to square one. In other words, there's just no actual character development despite such a massive opportunity. All this just so that Dexter remains the good guy, so that the audience does not question him or even doubt him. And this isn't a one-off, it's a pattern in Dexter, especially with villains. The writers build an interesting and nuanced villain, only to then sand them down to one-dimensional maniacs when it's time for Dexter to kill them. I mean, just look at how villains like Isaac Serco, Saxon, and even Trinity play out, and you'll just see the pattern. Now, imagine if Dexter was already questioning his own ways if he had killed Dokes previously, and then you added another dilemma with Miguel Prado. It just sounds like a recipe for a great season of television. Instead, what we get is highly entertaining, but lazy writing. And finally, the whole La Guerra situation, Deb, and the series finale. Similar to Dokes, La Guerra discovers Dexter's dark secret. Once again, Dexter faces a moral conundrum regarding a colleague. But as we already know by now, the writers have just no interest in adding any blemishes to Dexter, but they also cannot just copy what they did with Dokes. That would be complete. So, the writers make Deb lost. Deb goes against every fiber in the body and murders a fellow cop, and then goes on to suffer from the fallout and deal with her guilt. All this while Dexter gladly moves on. And the series finale, even in the final yard, the writers couldn't help protect Dexter from any kind of a real consequence. A good narrative would go with one of these. Dexter gets killed, or he gets caught, or he gets exposed as a serial killer. The writers chose the one. The finale sees Dexter fake his death, disappear, and live as a friend. Sure, you could say that he loses a lot of things, but he never actually faces real consequences. But since it was the series finale, the writers had to raise the stakes somehow, so they just made Dexter sacrificial lamb once again. I have no doubt that one reason for not killing Dexter, or even exposing him, was to go and guard or another. But given the evidence we've looked at in this video, I don't think the writers would ever have the courage to truly write a weighty consequence for Dexter, even if there were no consequences. They fell in love with the creation and, in the process, hurt the character more than they could imagine. There are just too many such instances where the writers take the easy way out. If I keep poking holes in the show, it'll stop being entertaining for me. So all I can do is say, when watching Dexter again, just suspend all logic and hopes of characterization, and enjoy the show. Not every show can be a Breaking Bad, nor should it be, otherwise TV would get boring rather quickly if everything was that intense and realistic. Man, it could have been so much more than that.
Cells ready. The Blood Ravens will be here shortly.
There is a command console inside the perimeter which you can use to lower the gate, Commander. Jump packs should allow you to reach it.
Commander, that position is exposed.
WWE began airing SmackDown on a weekly basis in August 1999, and just a few episodes in, there was a show where Triple H wrestled 5 times in one night. That's right, 5 times. My name is Jack the Jobber, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, in previous videos in this series, I've covered several latter-day WCW pay-per-views under the mad, anarchic creative reign of head writer Vince Russo. And I was really excited to get away from all that. But guess what? On this episode of SmackDown, which aired September 23rd, 1999, Vince Russo was still with the WWE, or the WWF, as it was known then. Now, of course, it's quite impossible to know just how much influence Vince Russo had over this show, because in the WCW episode we looked at, he's been very much the undisputed top dog, he's been the head writer, whereas here, in 99, he was very much still under the thumb of Vince McMahon, of course. But with that said, it's a weird show, so I'm not saying it's conclusive evidence, but it is a weird show. Triple H wrestled 5 times, did I mention that? Anyway, there's a load of matches to talk about, loads of different stipulations, and the longest match of the night is about 6 minutes long. My name's Jack the Jobber, that's what we're in for. My name's Jack the Jobber, and this is Very Weird Wrestling. Intro. A big shout out, as always, to the Patreon people who voted on this episode. Thank you, Patreon people. Your support is never overlooked. And hey, it's World Cup season, and also the season of summertime. So if you fancy some lightweight, kind of football/soccer inspired apparel, check out the link in the description below. Use Jobber15 to get yourself a lovely discount. On with this episode of SmackDown. So the show opens with a promo from this guy, which feels weird, doesn't it? No way around that. Feels weird now. And what's also weird, a bit different, is that this isn't just any Vince McMahon. This is babyface Vince McMahon. Oh good, everybody's favourite kind of Vince McMahon. So what's the story here then? Why is old Vincey Ed? Why do you give that? Let's have a look at what's going on. Let's have a look at the story. So Vince is feuding with his evil son-in-law, the gay Triple H, who of course, as many of us will already know, forced his way into a marriage with Stephanie McMahon, Vince's daughter, around this time. And that's where we stand at the time of this show. If you don't after this episode of SmackDown, Stephanie would reveal that she was in cahoots with Triple H all along. Look at them, look how happy they are, look how evil they are, look how happy she is. Oh my god, so good. And unless I'm mistaken, which I could be, because there were so many twists and turns in this content, I think Vince remained a good guy all the way up until WrestleMania 2000, where he screwed The Rock over and sided with Triple H and Stephanie anyway. So he ends up aligned with people he was feuding with a few months earlier anyway, just to give us like a swerve to the agenda with WrestleMania. I don't think anybody still knows. It's just kind of stuff that happened at this point in the Attitude Era. But then throughout the year 2000, WWE would really tighten up their stories and have like one of the best years in company history from a quality standpoint and probably from a business standpoint as well, I think. And then in 2001 it all went, whoa, it's all gone weird again. That's my history of the WWE in noises form. Anyway, this is before all of that. We're in 1999. Vince is still a face. We don't yet know that Stephanie was in on the plan with Triple H all along. So all we need to worry about right now is that Vince hates Triple H, and also there is no current WWF champion. That is vacant. Here's an interesting thing. People often, rightly, criticize the other Vince Russo, for eventually booking himself to be WCW champion, which obviously is a terrible and ludicrous thing. Really stupid decision, unquestionably bad, and made even worse in my opinion by the fact that he didn't even lose the belt to a wrestler, he just vacated it. So he didn't even put anybody over in dropping that title. But about 1 year prior to this creative travesty, turns out Vince McMahon did exactly the same thing. So 1 week before this show that we're talking about today, Vince McMahon won the WWF title in a match against Triple H, thanks to major interference from Stone Cold Steve Austin. Why not? I think just to kind of screw with Triple H and screw him out of the title, but also maybe because people else is on ladder. It's maybe like a picture of this. I don't know if he was that devious at this point. I think he just wanted to mess with Triple H. Fair enough. So that was on last week's SmackDown. A few days later on Raw, Vince comes out and vacates the title because he's like, oh shucks you guys, I'm not a wrestler, I can't be champion. Even though he booked himself to win them, even though like out of kayfabe, he definitely made this call. So just like Russo would, perhaps more infamously 1 year later, here Vince McMahon does the same thing, vacates the title instead of dropping it to, any wrestler. So just like Russo, Vince McMahon doesn't give anybody like that momentum boost of beating him for the title. And look, I'm not saying that in kayfabe beating Vince McMahon is some like ultimate amazing achievement, but it's the anarchy and chaos of the Attitude Era. Loads of weird things happen. So in this era of ultimate madness and ultimate chaos, the idea of not having somebody wrestle and beat Vince for the belt and just rather sensibly and administratively dropping it instead boggles my mind. So anyway, Vince wins the title on previously SmackDown, and on this week's Raw he comes out, vacates the title, and now we get to this episode. Vince comes out to the ring, opens the show with the promo, and calls out Triple H. Ooh, what's up? This is what? I've always had such a guilty, allegiance to my time. I know that Triple H has had multiple better themes. I know that Time to Play the Game is way more fitting and way better a song for Triple H. I know that Line in the Sand, the Evolution theme, is way better than my time. I think it's just because maybe it's the first Triple H theme I remember. And I know it's weird, and I know it maybe hasn't aged that well, but like, what's so? Anyway, here comes Big Paul with China backing him up. He's aligned, of course, with China still at this point. He is set to compete at the Unforgiven pay-per-view in just a few days' time after this show in a six-way match for the vacant belt. But remember, Vince hates Triple H at this point and wants to do anything he can to stop him from getting in that match. He really wants to stack the deck against Triple H, which is where we get like the central point of this video and why this is such a good advice. So even if Triple H does somehow overcome Vince's challenge and he knows it's too late to win, Vince wants to make sure that he is so beaten down by the Cage that he basically stands no chance of winning the belt. And so, Vince reveals that Triple H will tonight, in one night, be facing all five all-phase eventual opponents in that six-way match. Not 5-on-1, but in 5 individual one-on-one matches. Triple H does that thing that like wrestlers do sometimes when they can't believe some bad news, like, what? No! What? And not only that, but each of those 5 matches will have a different stipulation, one which benefits the opponent rather than Triple H. This is like some anime tournament kind of thing, isn't it? I've not watched that. And this really stipulation that he just makes it like, but just me, I think it would be more fun if we waited find out each stipulation when we arrive at it over the course of the video. That'll be a problem that I get running down. And so, overall challenge for Triple H to overcome is that we have to do 3 of the 5 matches at least in the course of this match to advance to that 6-way title match for the Vacant belt at Unforgiven. And his first match is right now. Bring out his first opponent. Why has Vince even given Triple H a chance of getting in the title match? Does he want him to win the belt back so much? Good question. And so, first match
Insurgents are in full retreat
on the night is Triple H versus the Big Show in a chokeslam challenge match, which basically means the first wrestler to hit a chokeslam on their opponent wins the match. No pinfalls, no submissions. Just first one to hit a chokeslam. Yeah, good luck, Paul. You can do it, buddy. This is really in your favour. Oh no, they're both called Paul, aren't they? I meant Triple H. Looks like we've got ourselves a good old-fashioned power.
This is very grave news.
Big Show gets in the ring, immediately headbutts the game. Shibata! Oh yeah, just really quickly. The referee for this one is Harvey Whippleman, because there's a storyline going on that like most of the main referees are on strike, so we have replacement refs around this time of Raw and SmackDown. This crops up a little bit later on in the show, plays a very minor role. But if you were thinking this would be a chance to like have some really exciting and fun special guest referees, like other members of the roster filling in for the refs who are on strike, you would be mistaken. They're not fun, exciting refs. It's like Harvey Whippleman and Tom Pritchard and stuff. Again, a quite stunning use of like kind of boring admin-based realism in the Attitude Era of all time. Anyway, Big Show, big headbutt to start. Triple H fights back and goes for the chokeslam, but he can't do it because the Big Show is the Big Show. So then the Big Show hits Triple H with a chokeslam and wins the match in 1 minute 51 seconds. Wow. Yeah, man. Why not? Less than 2 minutes long. You know what? You can keep your 45-minute Iron Man. You know what? Somewhere Pat McAfee is absolutely loving this. Not loving this as in this video. There no way does Pat McAfee. Probably too busy like doing sports podcast, making money, making money and doing sports.
Not Cyrus.
Such a man who loves old school wrestling. By old school, he means like the mid to late 2000s. Just a brief thing about the chokeslam, right? Because this was a chokeslam challenge and everything. I have such a distinct memory of when I first got into wrestling as a kid, back in like primary school. Every kid, because it was the latter days of the Attitude Era, like every kid in the playground knew about wrestling and loved wrestling. And for some reason, I don't know if this was just unique to my school, the chokeslam was the coolest move. The chokeslam. It's a choke and a slam. What an amazing combination. It's like the Keyblade. Anyway, at school once, I remember we were learning about probability, and we had to like come up with a thing that was like an impossible thing, a very unlikely thing, like a very likely thing, a certainty, and draw little pictures, little illustrations for each, representing each scenario. And that was our task. And one kid, I can't believe that I remember this. One kid, his impossible thing that he chose was, I will be chokeslammed by Kane tomorrow. And his little picture was Kane just absolutely nailing him with a chokeslam. And even then I remember thinking, not impossible though, is it? Very unlikely. I'll give him that. Not impossible. For all we know, Big Glenn could be on his way to Newcastle right now. Anyway, back to the wrestling. Big Show celebrates by chokeslamming Triple H again, just for fun. He goes for a third chokeslam, but China distracts him, and the game gets away, literally crawling up the ramp to safety. My favourite part of the show so far is that the production team clearly were not aware of when this segment was meant to end, and Big Show just kept going for different chokeslams and stuff. Eventually, Triple H got away, so they reloaded his theme tune several times. So as Triple H is getting out of there, all you can hear is just, well, it's the big... Well, time to say hello to our announce team at ringside. It's Michael Cole and Michael P.S. Hayes. Double Michaels. Double Stooges as well, am I right? Cole throws us to a scene from earlier today, from the referee's strike, which he describes as, he's like, we're about to see some disturbing footage. You know that Vince McMahon fed him that line. Workers' rights? Disgusting. Workers' rights. Oh no! Anyway, we see the refs striking earlier today with a load of rabid fans turning up in the concourse. Who turns up to excitedly watch the refs on a kayfabe strike? Man, wrestling was hot back then. Anyway, the Dudley boys turn up and they beat down one of the refs, who is Teddy Long, and they do this because Teddy is friends with Farouk, and the Dudley boys are facing Farouk and Bradshaw at the Unforgiven pay-per-view. It all makes sense. And there's no more follow-up to that storyline on this show, so I might as well go ahead and reveal what happens at Unforgiven in a few days after this. The Acolytes will beat the Dudleys after unwanted interference from Stevie Richards, who was stealing other people's gimmicks at the time, doing kind of like a chameleon sort of deal. Make a YouTube video about that, Stevie Richards, go on. Phone up your mate, get James Romero on the phone. Do you think when James Romero answers the phone, even if it's to somebody he knows, he still adopts that very business-like tone at the start of his videos where he's like, hey Stevie, James. Anyway, backstage we go, where a baby Chris Jericho, fresh on the scene in the WWF, has jumped over from WCW very recently at this time. He's in the middle of a feud with Ken Shamrock. They are supposed to be having a first blood match at the pay-per-view, but Jericho says, no, I don't want to wait for the pay-per-view. I want to have the first blood match tonight. And it looks like it's going ahead. I'm like, are 5 gimmick matches not enough for one show? Back to the arena, make some noise, X-Pac, think you can tell us what to do? Yes, it's X-Pac, formerly known as Twitter Pac, and I'll have to be honest, I always loved his in-ring pyro that formed an X as he did his pose. X-Pac is in a babyface tag team with Kane at this point, and is also about to challenge Mark Henry for the European title. I've met Mark Henry a couple of times actually, just a bit of an exciting tidbit for you there. Isn't that thrilling? Yeah. But you know what's even more thrilling? Michael Cole tells us that this episode of SmackDown is sponsored by Championship Motocross featuring Ricky Carmichael. So real, you'll be pulling your teeth out the dirt. That's the real tagline that he says. The 90s was so radical and sick. And then weird contrast, Michael Hayes is like, and also it's sponsored by crispy M&Ms. They're oh so tasty and delicious. But before this match begins, they are interrupted by the entrance of D'Lo Brown. Yes, he's doing his head thing. Look at him go. D'Lo is here to join the announce team because he is facing the winner of this match for the European title at Unforgiven, as Mark Henry throws X-Pac 1 million light years into the sky. Mark Henry then does kind of an X-Pac sort of style maneuver, actually, hitting kind of a reverse, kind of a Bronco Buster to the back of X-Pac, who's draped over the ropes. And then Mark Henry just falls so nimbly to the outside of the ring and lands on his feet. Oh, the aerial assassin Mark Henry, is it? Terrifying. X-Pac fights back and hits the real version of the Bronco Buster in the corner, as on commentary D'Lo says, almost wistfully, oh man, I've been there before. What, like he's pining for the golden days of summer? Mark Henry gets back on top at this stage, but then distracts himself by talking some trash to D'Lo, which allows X-Pac to send Mark Henry over the top rope to the outside with a big clothesline. And honestly, I have to say at this point, Mark Henry, on this random SmackDown, is bumping his ass off. Unfortunately, that is the end of the match. Mark Henry gets counted out. I would usually be like, oh, what a cheap finish. But honestly, Henry made that clothesline to the outside look so devastating and impactful that I kind of buy it. X-Pac's like, yay! Don't know why. Of course, the title does not change hands on a count-out, so he's not the European champion, while the real European champion, Mark Henry, gets into a brawl with D'Lo on the outside. D'Lo gets whipped into the ring post and Mark Henry stands tall, but at the pay-per-view, D'Lo would go on to beat Mark Henry to become a 4-time European champion, breaking, I believe, his own record number of reigns in the clothesline. Why did D'Lo always get that back? Different? Another little backstage segment now as Luna Vachon is challenging for the women's title at Unforgiven, and she really wants to make it a hardcore match. Ivory accepts this challenge, making it a hardcore match later on this show, but I thought I'd mention it because there's no more of that. So I'll explain what happened. The match I'm taking is basically like a backstage brawl. One Ivory would win, retaining the title despite heavy interference from Tori. So Ivory is basically a hardcore that's scary from the line. More Ivory. Next up, man, never seen this mistake when I do these reviews. And this hitting with him as well. Jesus, that way. Jarrett West, that's it. This boy passes past 30 minutes. He's winning his A-stage manager at ringside because she's a woman, but unfortunately, Jarrett's real persona here is less like terrifying evil good. It's more like 80s high school. Sup, loser! And then he had lots of names out of the hand where he's like, look, look at what! It's all the other good things. So he's not just doing the thing. Then the bottom of the game is I know what I'm going to say with the flying party. So China's a phase in this IC title feud with Jarrett, but she's a heel when she's with Triple H. So we have to keep, and China shows up a lot on this show because she's with Triple H. So there's a lot of flip-flopping between do we like China, do we not, Jeff is conscious by this flying party shot. China then puts an apron on him and steals his trunks and then puts the trunks on herself. And I'm like,
This way, brothers.
okay, I kind of get it. I think it's like
Blood
a
Ravens.
who
Good to have
really
you
wears
here,
the
Commander.
pants kind of guy.
Report,
But then they
guardsmen.
explicitly spell that out for
Yes,
us on
sir,
content.
of course.
Let the audience do some of the
The
work
enemy
for
is heavily
themselves, Russo.
entrenched in
Sorry, I know
holding the
once again,
entirety of the
I know that we have no way of
facility.
verifying that this is
From
Russo.
what we can tell,
But
we're
it certainly
facing
feels
large
very
numbers
Russo.
of Chaos
Although maybe
Space
it wasn't
Marines
Russo,
as well as
because at
Vandus
Unforgiven,
heretics.
China would actually beat
The
Jeff
enemy's
Jarrett,
raised
and you
some
have to
sort of
imagine that if Russo was in
powerful
charge of this
energy
decision,
shield
he
around
would probably have
the
had Jarrett
central
win
portion of
after
the
like
facility.
a million run-ins, and
Our
somehow
spec
Bischoff
scans
would
show
be
a power
involved, and the
station
match
to
would
the
end with
north,
Russo and
Commander.
Bischoff and Jarrett
The shield
gloating
must
over
be drawing
China's
energy
prone
from
body.
there.
It's like, we got you again,
We
you
will
stupid
take that
Mark, sorry.
station then.
I've been a bit traumatized by all
managed to
those
establish a
WCW
field
episodes.
command
But then
here,
again,
but we've
maybe
yet
this
to
was
push any
Vince Russo.
further.
Because despite beating Jarrett, the match would have a dusty finish and China wouldn't actually win the IC title. It's time for the Big Red Machine, Kane. Now, Kane, always kind of more exciting in theory than in practice, but I have to admit that OG masked Kane in the 90s, the presentation was absolutely top-notch. He is another one of Triple H's side opponents tonight. What's up? Full entrance again for the gamer, full live stream, China's winning this stuff. It's a big proper entrance, you really just see it, not that long ago at all. And we just saw China in the last segment. So she went to the back and then came out again with Triple H. Just let her go to ringside. And this stipulation against Kane is an Inferno match.
If we take it from them, we can
We
silence
really
those
couldn't care
guns.
less back then, could we? If there was an Inferno match in today's WWE, it would be the Flamin' Hot Cheetos Inferno match, and it would be announced like 8 months before it took place. And in the build, both original participants in the match would get injured, and the eventual winner would be like Jelly Roll. Let me stand next to your fire. Yeah, so Inferno matches are not as exciting as they sound. Usually a bit of a letdown on it. It's like, ooh, they're gonna go to the fire. No. No. Again, so Kane gets a joke on, he's about to go, and he notices something way off in the distance. What's that? That's the wall, brother. He was in it. Turns out X-Power. More for interpretation this way. Stupid. Kane hates the team. He tries to send the ball down. He reaches over the plane. Off the top rope, onto this Canadian on the outside. Wow. Didn't tell you that. So, whatever under the table chooses or chooses not to do without any government regulations to speak up, thank you very much. Kane rolls with the ministry guy on the outside, but this one knocks him into the fire from behind, and Kane's blood pads on fire. Triple H is one of the best without actually doing that. But Kane doesn't care about the match result. And in a moment that's kind of cheesy, but also kind of brilliant as well, I have to admit. Kane chases the heels away with his still burning blood and he's about to ensure you can. To the back again, and turns out that he's not very far at all at this stage. So suddenly when he's doing the big show back to the big show game and everything, and it's all over that. So Taker admits, you know what, yeah, I think the first time challenge because Undertaker and Baby were balancing it until like the story following. Well, this was kind of a weird unofficial beginning of that finish. It was kind of like a little test run, I suppose. It wouldn't fully be sure. I don't go from Baby he came back on the bike with it. It wasn't really for me. I don't think I particularly enjoyed it. But I get why he did that. I really thought they wanted a bit more like a real to fit in the modern day attitude of WWE. Vince McMahon interrupted the interview and said, "Oh, I'm taking it easy after Triple H stuff. All everyone needs to do is please." And Taker's like, "No, I'm not feeling it now." And Vince is like, "Right, fine. If you don't wrestle Triple H, I'll remove you from the title market unforgiven." And Taker's like, "Yeah, thank you. Just leave." This was him, I believe, being written off for like Taker trying to make up his injury and that's one way to write him off there. Kind of buries the point to go. So we're gonna have to find a way to go with Taker. More on that later on. Here comes Dwayne in his best red hand. So the video is like really good. Okay, it's a new blue brand thing that we're doing. No, I'm not gonna wear that away. He's also one of the tag team champions at this point. He cuts a promo in the ring, asking a couple of ringside hockey players if he can borrow the Stanley Cup because he wants to turn it sideways, stick it straight up in the etc. Basically, cheap hot seconds. They're in balance, Dallas Stars and Harley Rodman out there the Stanley Cup. And it strikes me just how silly babyface promos are sometimes. Not specifically from The Rock, just in wrestling. Like The Rock at this point is the coolest babyface around. Maybe like the second behind Steve Austin, but very good. But The Rock's the man. But if we keep between the lines of the promo, and the end of it, The Rock is basically saying, "Oh, your hockey is really good, can I be your friend?" Anyway, The Rock's interrupted by his fellow tag team champion, Mankind. And in their own they both talk about, very charismatically, they both talk about how they're going to hit Triple H's ass tonight. Yeah. Then they are interrupted by Road Dogg. Huge pop for the Road Dogg because he goes his introduction and everything. But like, I was still quite blown away. I was like, man, sometimes you just don't quite remember how old a Road Dogg was. And of course, he brings out Billy Gunn. But Billy Gunn also gets a gigantic reaction. I'm like, whoa. Obviously, it's going to be Billy Gunn. It's the new age album. Why is everybody so surprised? So I did some research. So this is actually the reunion of the new age album. He split earlier in the year when Billy played Road Dogg. Then Billy went on to win King of the Ring 99. Now this seemed to be the start of a real singles push for Billy, but it was very abruptly ended when he ran into The Rock at SummerSlam and lost a Kiss My Ass match, which meant he had to, after the match, he had to kiss a large woman's ass. Poor funny. Russo may have had more influence than he might have been running the show. Anyway, Billy's singles push is like majorly on hold now because he's back with Road Dogg. The New Age Outlaws are back together. Very exciting for the crowd and everything, of course. Feels a little bit for Billy like he's like going back to the match or something. It's like one of those relationships where like you know they shouldn't have got back together. Like Billy's like, yeah man, I'm just happy to be back in the tag division with the whole Road Dogg. Yeah, so happy. Anyway, right now, the match is on, we're straight into it. Billy dominates the start of the meeting and then makes a crucial tactical error by running balls first into Mankind's skull, which has to go down as a mistake, certainly. The champions stay on top for a while, and Mankind keeps up this very testes-based offense with an immortal leg drop to the family jewels before promising the ref that it was a shot to the midsection. Don't do Billy, it was just to the midsection. Fully sold. That's why he's on the best. Well, that and, the insane break with the babyface fire and the selling and the legacy and everything. But he gets better with that. More domination from the champions, and Mankind distract the referee while The Rock punches Road Dogg in the corner. Does The Rock and Mankind strategy do The Rock and shot the neck entirely revolved around attacking their opponent's family jewel? Have I missed it? How did I never know that? The match eventually breaks down and The Rock goes on the outside. Rock goes to get back in the ring, but Billy rips Mankind through and then catches Mankind on the boot out and takes once and twice, new tag team champions in like 6.5 minutes. I think it's the most happened show possibly. When you tie the main event. What I'm saying is, we basically watched the Omega Okada on SmackDown 1999. And you know what? You get to see it once. And then you make it like, I take it all back from it. Maybe he does belong back with his boy the road. Maybe Heroes will carry the belt on to Unforgiven, where they would defend against a young Edge and Christian at the pay-per-view, and they would successfully beat Edge and Christian after interference from the Hardy Boys. The tag division, you can tell here, is really on the cusp of its third which I mean, backstage, Vince with Mideon and Viscera. It was really Viscera, as I've written here, because after the second impossible joke I'm released for myself as well. I'll read it out. Second impossible joke. Vince meets with Mideon and Viscera. What a Chikara to the Creole tag team label for. They didn't do that. No, they absolutely would not. Anyway, Vince tells them that your boss, The Undertaker, isn't really doing what I say, even though I asked him really nicely. So now, please will both of you take on Triple H instead in a handicap match, 2-on-1. And Viscera and Mideon are like, yeah, no worries, Vince, that's all good. We are happy to do that for you. And I am shocked by good conflict resolution, everybody. Really positive. Elsewhere, we get a fiery babyface promo from number one Triple H, who says no matter what odds Vince stacks against him, he will not be broken. He will win at least 3 of the 5 matches tonight. Go on to Unforgiven and good luck with WWF champion. What's going on? And I'm not really Right, it's time for Triple H's third match then. Full entrance, obviously. 1-2. This is what we take as match for. Now, it's 2-on-1 against this one. It's also a casket match. Triple H is quickly on the back foot. Not only to finish the handicap match, this is now tired of his two moves. Ronnie Dead versus Susan does mention more miscommunication. Causing this to smash Mideon by accident. For China also out tonight with a nose leg. The game is taking both opponents and rolls in with into the casket for the good. But wait a second. What the hell are you doing here? Oh, not it. Shane's currently a babyface, just like his dad is at this moment in time, so he wants to help screw Triple H over. And that explains why he then says, Triple H, you haven't won the match yet. You need to get both of your opponents into the casket at the same time. I don't know if this will be Vince back to taking the casket at the same time. Just to let Baby get a count out, if Triple H is correct. So yeah, because of this leading to Shane, the match is still going on. Immediately, Viscera jumps the gate. Hey, you took a pedigree about 30 seconds ago, and now you're back on your feet, are you? Viscera, I'm gonna need maybe some King's Road Fighting Spirit stuff, maybe then some accumulative damage selling over the course of the match, matching with the ebbs and the flows and the good psychology and everything. Otherwise, I'm afraid your cage match rating is going to plummet, my friend. It's actually not. People on cage match don't care about selling as much as they should. It's a bloody disgrace. There was real feeling. Anyway, Mideon gets out of the casket and holds Triple H down while Viscera hits him with a few splashes, and they roll Triple H in for the win. Of his 3 matches so far, the game has lost 2 of them and now needs to win both of his remaining matches to get into the 6-way title match at the pay-per-view. That's a mountain to climb. Can our brave hero Triple H do it? Right, time for Bob Holly then. This is Bob's match. Crash is just accompanying him, and he is taking on hardcore champion Al Snow in a hardcore match. But it's a non-title match because Al already has a title match set up at the pay-per-view. Al's opponent at the pay-per-view is going to be the Big Boss Man. We see this clip from Raw a few days before this show of Bob smashing a pitcher into the Big Boss Man's face for some reason. Into his face. Suzy Duck, Suzy Duck. So this match goes like this. The bell rings, they wrestle for 10 seconds. Then we cut to the parking lot where the Big Boss Man is cutting a promo on some dogs through a car window. That's because, you might have guessed it, the match between Al Snow and Big Boss Man at the Unforgiven pay-per-view is going to be the now infamous Kennel from Hell match. So this match on SmackDown is being used to hype that, I guess. Sounds worthwhile. Anyway, back in the ring, Al takes control of the match, so Crash tries to interfere. Doesn't go well for him, but it does allow Bob to hit a big Falcon Arrow to pick up the win. A win off a Falcon Arrow. I was led to believe that nobody kicks out of the Falcon Arrow, and that would apparently be correct, actually, yes, because he did win with that move. Oh, the meme has failed. Bossman runs in, briefly attacks Bob Holly, but focuses his attack mainly on Al Snow, his pay-per-view opponent. That's right, Bossman doesn't really care about attacking the man who once again smashed a pitcher into his face on Raw. Al H's fourth match, it's a boiler room brawl with Mankind. Ooh, goody. Like a kid on Christmas Day. The referee explains that the first one to leave the boiler room wins. And they shut the door. Triple H is right next to this, so obviously they immediately tries to open his gate. And he can't get it open, so I assume that the ref is unfairly holding the door shut from the outside. You know what? Here's being screwed here. Anyway, Triple H can't get out the door. Mankind jumps in and they brawl. Very much what you would expect out of the body, especially with TV one. Big something batting, stuff, they hit each other with some games, things are being knocked over, fine, look at all these next goals, and so on. And yes, Bailey takes a club and knocks some goals to cause it. Apart from that, there's not too much to report. At one stage, these two crew members are holding stuff, and they're like, uh-oh, and they're trying to get out of the way and stuff. I think that's my highlight. I think that's pretty good. Mankind clamps on the mandible claw, beats Triple H, and could feasibly walk out of the boiler room and win the match right now. But he's Mankind is not going to do that. Instead, he heads up a level and goes to a very good scowl on Triple H tonight. But then, an unseen person in a front him with a massive hole, and Mankind falls to a table instead. I don't think we'd ever conclusively find out who was behind this, by the way, but I'm not certain about that. If anybody out there does indeed know, please let me know in the comment section down below. And you know what, if you're enjoying this video, smash that like button. I'm a YouTuber. Anyway, Triple H rolls out of the room and wins, and he only needs to win his one final match tonight to make it to the 6-way title match at Unforgiven. Now it's time for that first blood match between Ken Shamrock and Y2J. Remember that being set up ages ago? Jericho, quite wisely, decides to wear full hockey attire for this one, which is actually genius when you think about it. Still, the match begins, and it becomes apparent that Jericho, while he's remembered to wear defensive gear for the first blood match, he hasn't remembered the other side of the equation. He hasn't remembered that you have to actually muster any kind of offense of his own, because Shamrock beats him all over the place. I think without Jericho yet hitting a single move in the match, his body gone rather than decides enough is enough, I'm going to do it better. And he also just immediately gets a shove by Shamrock. I mean, it's the world's most dangerous man, second most dangerous man behind Steve Blackman. So it's the world's most dangerous man. We know it's Steve Blackman. But Ken's pretty dangerous too. By the way, obviously, it's devastating. When I found out I was going to be doing an episode on a SmackDown from 1999, I was like, Steve better be on this. There's no Steve. Anyway, Mr. Hughes' interference maybe doesn't work immediately, but it does buy Y2J enough time to grab his hockey stick and just smash Shamrock repeatedly in the mid-zone. Mr. Hughes holds Shamrock down while Jericho heads up top and hits a big splash, and that's set to cause internal bleeding to reward the win to the Chrissy boy. And I find it weird. Jericho didn't really land a single blow until he benefited from interference in this match. Shamrock was portrayed as so many levels of growth. But this would actually be Shamrock's last ever WWE match ever. Under weird circumstances. Because if you remember, not last year with Jericho earlier on, this was supposed to be at Peyton. Then took place with the Shamrock instead, and saw Shamrock lose, but not getting pinned or submitted, losing like weird and so this feels very much like it was only meant to be a temporary absence. Was Shamrock supposed to come back after this? Anyway, whatever the reason, Shamrock was out of there and back to his MMA career before too long, and Jericho would have to find a new opponent at Unforgiven, and that would turn out to be X-Pac Make Some Noise X-Pac. And X-Pac actually wins that one at the pay-per-view, only via DQ though, thanks again to interference from Mr. Hughes. That feels very last-minute pay-per-view replacement, doesn't it? Feels like it. Almost time for the main event, which is Triple H's final match of the 5. But first, we see Vince McMahon backstage in a bit of an impromptu seeming meeting with the British Bulldog. Davey Boy says he's been owed a title shot for months now. And apparently that's true because Vince is like, yeah, I guess so, you're right. Yeah, oh, God. One sec. Can't do this. Oh, yeah. Davey wants in that 6-way match at Unforgiven, which remember does have a vacant place now because The Undertaker just walked off before, remember? He's had enough of this wrestling crap, so Vince is like, yeah, fine, go for it, I'll put you in, Davey. I have major issues with this, Davey. What are you doing, Davey? Not in a six-way match. You said you were owed a title shot. Vince agreed, but you've blown that in a six-way. Even Scott Steiner knows that your chances of win drastic go down. But no, Davey Boy is satisfied on one condition. He gets to referee the main event tonight, Triple H's final match of the 5. And Vince is like, whatever, go for it. I don't care. Knock yourself out. He doesn't really say that, but that's the vibe. Vince couldn't care less. So why would Davey want to do this? All I can think, logically, it would make sense that Davey wants to do this to make certain that Triple H loses the deciding match of his best of 5. And that means that he will not be in that match, thereby increasing Davey's chances of becoming champion. That's what I'm thinking at this moment. Turns out not to be the case. Davey gets changed into his referee gear in like record time actually. And it's time for his final opponent, The Rock, in a Brahma bull rope stipulation. Very clever. I see what they did there. So not again. Yeah, again, the full entrance with China and the lights and the music. I mean, we didn't get it last time because it was that boiler room match with Mankind in the back. I'm imagining now the Game just slowly walking to the boiler room with the lights and with his water bottle. But thankfully, we didn't get that. Now, if you expected this main event, the final match of the show, The Rock versus Triple H, to like really bring the work, which has been kind of lacking overall so far. But if you thought this is going to do it, you would be wrong. It's a walk and brawl, featuring inflatable alien man. Now The Rock gets the better of the brawl, and it turns out the Brahma bull rope stipulation includes falls count anywhere rules, as we see a pinfall attempt on the outside. Is that right? Is that what normal bull rope matches normally do? I don't think so. I don't know. Triple H gains control back inside with just a big knee drop to the balls, possibly fueled by the knowledge somehow that in 20 years' time, The Rock will be messing up Triple H's best-laid WrestleMania plans on a regular basis. And then the Game tries to intimidate Davey Boy, who does like Uno reverse and actually intimidates Triple H, who is possibly at this point remembering that Davey Boy has still never truly forgiven him for the events of Survivor Series 97. The Rock retakes control and beats Triple H all the way up to the stage, and China just stands on the other end of the ramp instead of helping, which leaves her wide open to an attack from her, and she has Jarrett with the frying pan earlier. Jarrett locks in the figure 4 on a completely unconscious China, and remember, China also managed to completely knock out Jarrett with the frying pan earlier. So it's just a frying pan. Jarrett hit her in the back with it, not the head. Doesn't have special powers, imbued with dark magic. What's going on? Jarrett goes away, match there, and back down to the ring. The Rock is the Rock Bottom. Surely he's about to win. And then he's going to the Lariato! What are you doing, Dave? He has to go to power slam, Triple H with the pedigree, and picks up his crucial third win of the night, flipping his ticket to that power match and forgiven. Now this heel turn today is kind of like out of nowhere. My best guess is that it was to fill in for Undertaker's absence as a heel on the roster. Maybe Undertaker's spell on the sideline was like quite short notice, I suppose. Again, everybody knows the final story. Miraculously recovered China to end the show, and Triple H's 5 matches all add up to a total of about 18 minutes. The thing I find more interesting is how weak Triple H looked here. I mean, he's Triple H. He's the king of kings. He's the man who loves winning. Although on the other hand, I do get that, because of all the different stipulations, he was never actually pinned or submitted on this show, despite losing twice. He lost the chokeslam match due to getting chokeslammed. He lost the casket match due to being rolled into the casket, 2-on-1 by the way as well. But even out of the 3 matches he won, one was due to Kane basically abandoning the contract and getting set on fire with more than taking with one was due to miscontrol in the with the prodding pole, and one was due to Davey Boy's water. Anyway, Triple H gets into that match of Unforgiven, the 6-way title match, with Steve Austin as the special kind of enforcer ref. Of course, brings back the title with Austin reluctantly counting the pinfall, and if you watch the footage, the crowd just deflates so rapidly. And I think we're a bit confused as well, like, why has Austin done that? And I don't know. Ah yes, that notorious rule abider, the Texas rattlesnake. Someone could definitely learn that. But because he had got this very strong anyway, there was no point talking about Austin in the first place. Certainly no point in robbing it to Vince McMahon of it anyway. You might as well just kept it all in. We're going to go on next week and not go through the But it was the attitude era, baby. Woohoo! Double challenge, let's go! Hours and hours. It's kind of startlingly similar to one of those Vince Crusade New WCW tapes. But then one of those were periods Ultimate Warrior and one is the most beloved year in WWE history. It's weird though. Although we have to remember this was just a weekly TV episode, of course, and that the booking style wasn't nearly as bad as the WCW stuff or as all-consuming. Didn't like run all the way through the top and top the bottom every single time. It was just quite a lot. But it was mostly effective. Just as I say, unlike those Russo WCW, there was still a semblance of it. No Attitude Era, how overrated is right here. Attitude Era overrated. Attitude Era, Unk is so tough right now. Remember that? Hello, the Unk is so tough? Anyway, that was my time. And I know, I even lost the score. Thank you very much for watching. I have been Jack the Jobber. Do you want to go like the video if you enjoyed it? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Please share if you want to as well. And I'll be back really soon. I don't know what the next episode will be, but I have no doubt that there's going to be something. Okay, thank you for watching.
Tactical squad.
Fire.
Readiness is all. Remain vigilant.
Allied infantry are dying. We must support them.
How can we serve? Get to that take and hold. Understood.
Understood. Going there now.
The chapter banner flies.
Hi, I'm Arthur, and you know what? It's been a minute since I covered the basics of a Cardinal faction in 40k. One of the playable ones that at current times have been absorbed into another faction and are basically non-existent. No, we're not talking about the Death Watch today. Hi everyone, I'm Arthur, and on this channel, we do our best to piss off as many people as possible by making half-correct statements about anything and everything without acknowledging why. Like, fun fact, I actually do know it's pronounced Catachan. I just prefer saying Catacan, and also prefer saying it that way because it makes people annoyed. Be happy that it's just that. I almost pronounced Catan as Citan intentionally up to this point. So, yeah, I'll expect my thank you letters in the mail. Nothing makes me happier than intentionally spreading more or less harmless misinformation in a way that would make me laugh just a little bit more than I probably should. So, on the topic of being God's silliest little fool, we are going to talk about the Harlequins, the greatest of the jesters in the 40k setting, and probably the only Eldari faction to tolerate more so than the Drukhari because they're just funny. I do have problems with them, obviously, but it is what it is. So I'm going to give a general overview of their lore, their history, give an up-to-date account of what they're probably doing right now to my knowledge, and then discuss some of their factions so that if you wanted to hop into it, you could probably pick one and go from there. So, drink a game of subs, eat something tasty, and before we hop into this video, I've got bills to pay, but also I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. Getting back from Adepticon, I have to admit I went a bit too nuts. I never buy large bulks of a singular game, but I always buy multiple different games, and a lot of different starter sets of games that I eventually just play until I get thrown out on them. So, yeah, I had quite a lot of games with me this year, because the selections are fantastic. To give you a short list, Conquest, First Blood, Retro Raygun, Carnivale, Relic Knight, Relic Blade, and got even significantly deeper into Conflict 47 by buying every single one of those I could get my hands on. So when I say I had storage issues when I got back, it's a bit of an understatement. But with the help of the lovely individual at Tabletop Stronghold coming in clutch once again, I was able to store these bad boys and prep them for painting. Pictured in front of you is my miniature case of over maybe 200 different miniatures, a lot of them from the convention, some of them were just stuff that I was storing, ranging in scales from 10mm Argatoria all the way to 38mm Conquest, and I still have some wiggle room too. The XL case is firmly in my game area. That's not to say that if I dropped it, it wouldn't happen. No, this thing's sturdy. For context, my first case survived my house fire. That's not actually a joke. It actually did for some reason, and it is perfectly intact. So, if you want to get yourself one of these cases and support the channel, be sure to click my link and also use code BONES25 at checkout for 25% off your order, be it cases, terrain, or anything else that the site has. I am low-key probably going to grab myself a third case sometime soon, so expect that to be mentioned in the future if it does, and that's just a testament to how good the cases are. Special thanks to Tabletop Stronghold for sponsoring this video and just being the coolest guy to work with. And let's get back to the clowns. To understand the Harlequins, we kinda gotta go pretty far back and understand the fall of the Eldar. Yeah, this is a topic that everyone and their mom on any 40k channel has discussed at some point to the point of insanity, but do follow me on this. It's because Kagarak was involved and we thought it was funny, therefore it is kind of relevant to the Harlequins. Basically, you know the broad strokes. Having finished the war in heaven to a decent enough victory where the Eldar as a species can rest on their laurels for a few million years, they did so, becoming so unmatched in power that the universe kind of had nothing to contend with them, and that basically made them more or less all-powerful. They were incredibly psychic entities, had weapons that could fight gods, and not to mention they had gods that helped them from time to time, and I'm pretty sure at this point they were actually functionally immortal. This is what led to the slide. A friend of mine from eons past once gave me a good example as to how the Eldar's fall actually worked. Basically imagine you're a menial individual doing like a basic job, and you are a member of a race of hyper-specialized aliens who don't ever really die and can do literally with very little oversight. Cool, but not everyone immediately jumps into blood orgies, right? I hope. So what happens is you start off small. Good example, say you want to be a chef. Very simple task. You want to be an accomplished chef, and you have the entire universe at your hands. You enjoy the pageantry of cooking, prepping veggies, getting food ready, cleaning, washing, collecting the freshest of ingredients from the most exotic of worlds. Cool. You create dishes that are known throughout your planet, or at least your neck of the woods, as some of the best. But here's where things get weird. Say you do that for about 100 years. Human beings can be chefs for 50, 60, 70 years and still kind of have a little bit of a zest for it. Just look at Mark up here. White. This is the path you have set. For about 100 years, you get a little bit stale. You kind of want to up things up a little bit. So you learn with the grapevine that there is a rare species of plant on another planet that was grounded up and dried actually has a flavor so unique that nobody so, being a chef, you go out and find this ingredient, and then realizing that this is an option, you find rarer and rarer ingredients and experiment with them, drying, roasting, crushing in a mortar and pestle to combine all ingredients, and then getting into the chemical sciences and creating flavor by hand. Another 100 years go by and you get bored again. Now you learn new cooking methods, more exotic ways of getting flavor out of things. Certain rabbit holes you go through, thus you learn how to do the chemical extraction of blood from a rare kind of crab that, when added to a dish, gives it a special blue pigment, but is also incredibly good for the people who consume it, giving them a very energized feeling, which also, fun fact, horseshoe crabs, their blood is blue and is also steroids to antibiotics for some reason. Neat, right? Don't ever say I don't teach you shit. You pull rare ingredients, pull rare items, rare techniques, give it another 800 years of doing new things over and over and over again, and eventually it all gets stable. So now you are at this point where you have no idea what to add, and it becomes more of a performance to you than it is just the actual meal. Cooking is great, but making people remember it is more important. So, take all that together, that's about 1,000 years of learning recipes, cooking, and what have you. Now, take that for your standard Eldar, who at the time was uncontested and living under a god, then magnify that by 1,000. You go through that cycle of inspiration and excitement, then seeking out more elaborate ways to cook. Eldar, being millions of years old, they set themselves on these paths that lead to them wanting to master a skill, mastering it, then realizing there are other avenues to add on to it. So eventually, you are turning meals into experiences of consuming live species preserved psychically because it appeals to the performance. And you might think that that's extreme and that no one would ever do that, but fellas, there's a meal out there in our world where you consume a live octopus, and them shits are smarter than you give credit for. So don't tell me that if you were immortal, you wouldn't get weird after a couple million, right? So this is how it happened. It didn't matter the field, it didn't matter the level of obsession. You would slide unless you were careful or careful. And due to them being a second race, this desire for Slanesh, the idea of enough is a myth. The obsession with the height of debauchery caused them to seek greater pleasures. Now, with the birth of Slanesh and the death of like 99% of the other species, you had the Drakari who wanted to keep up this level of excess, and instead of finding easier ways to survive, they just decided to go to Kamara and Wegway. Then you have craft worlders who became a bit puritanical and live on the craft worlds. You had the Exodites who kind of just vibed with dinosaurs, which, you know what, move. But you had also this other group that were basically the most conservative of the Eldar pre-fall, which, I mean, it's not saying much, but yes, the Harlequins were actually quite chaste in how they dealt with that success. They worshipped one of the Eldar gods, laughing about it, and they really wanted to be better at much other than performing for their god and the masses, which in their most a lot of their performances are being seen as a master class were used to shame the degenerates that the species had become. Now they do all excessive, the comedians and haters, but a lot of their plays were being used to foreshadow and even warn about the coming purple apocalypse that was going to subsume the whole universe. So before the fall ever happened, I believe most of the Eldar Harlequins probably just fucked off into their little hole and little webway, continuing to perform for each other and mastering their craft further, and each getting their own specialism just based on how they cover those masks as to what the and but for now, this is just to give you an idea of what the Harlequins are as a generic sense. They are performers first, second, and last. They are also some of the greatest duelists in the history of the setting. As remember when I said that they would do these plays for the debased society of what Eldar had become, and it would basically just, make fun of them for the freak shit they were on. Yeah, Eldar society didn't take well to being king-shamed as often as they were, and would often attack the Harlequins in bouts of intense fury. So, they had to learn how to defend themselves, and a lot of their teachings held up over time. So, the Harlequins, as a distinct and separate faction from Eldar society, was born. And I think that as far as origin stories go, being the doomsayers who were kinda right, but not really holding it over the heads of others, yeah, it's kinda cool. So, let's get into the modern discussion of the Harlequins proper, and discuss kinda what they're doing and what their role in the universe is, and their, unique culture. Harlequin culture, as you could probably guess, is based around a simple idea. The performance, the play, as it were. Their entire life is a dance that cannot end, and that is because Kegarak is the Eldar god of merriment, albeit not so much one of debauchery and pleasure. It has led to a lot of the Harlequins being viewed with a great deal of confusion by those who fight them. Like, their mainstay way of drawing up battle plans for any offensive that they launch is to basically see which play in their arsenal fits this battle the best and find one where they're on the winning side and play all the cards of the winners most of the time. I know sometimes they probably just pick the losers for like a joke, I guess, which sounds about right for them. They are a bit confusing, and a lot of Harlequins tend to take their roles really fucking seriously, so even if they die in their role, they will choose to die if it meant that the performance would go on. In the end, the Harlequins are jesters, entertaining a grinning king, which is basically the best way to sum them up in as short a term as possible. They are genuinely just kinda weird like that, since they dipped out of the Eldar apocalypse prior to the fall of Slaanesh. They had some extra time to learn the web way out, which is why, although most other Eldar species use it, the Harlequins kind of hold a particular level of demeanor. Through practice, or just the sight of their god helping them on their way through it, they tend to be very low, and they're usually the biggest threat to the They have a fondness for that oh-so-amazing prize hidden there, and that is the Black Library, a repository of all knowledge in recorded history. I don't know if it's ever stated how it gets there, but basically my headcanon is that the Black Library is this place where whenever something is written down, the second it's written down, it manifests in the Black Library as a copy. So there is a full copy of the Book of Magnus in there, as well as every book in the series of A Court of Thorns and Roses. No matter how many times the Harlequins try to burn the series to ashes, it just keeps coming back. Yeah, everyone's getting shots today, I'm sorry. Though on that train of thought, the idea that there is theoretically a single Harlequin out there with access to the Black Library who discovered the Warrior Cat series and thinks it's pretty neat brings me a great deal of joy. Kegarak defends this library with a zeal that you don't see elsewhere. It makes sense. You can find any home in this library, and knowledge is power, as the Space Marines would have you believe. The Harlequins, outside of that, tend to just go places and do stuff. It is a bit vague, but they themselves are a bit vague. They show up at a random location and perform or engage in war or do both, with their various masks showing up to perform some kind of esoteric task that, as of right now, most people involved other than them don't really understand. Due to their Shadow Seers and Grand High Super Mega Shadow Seers, I guess, being able able to see the future better than most, it will make sense. So, I guess suck it, Ulfwan, and stay losing. You tried to stop the Night Lords from killing you, and in the end, you just pissed off the Night Lords and convinced them to kill you more. As it were, the Harlequins don't just go around killing people while dressed up like clowns and dancing. They do actually perform for various species, though mostly just the ones they hold a degree of respect for. Like, they are psychic races who can manipulate the emotions of others with just a thought. It's stated that the Harlequins who do perform for basic humans can cause some interesting results, ranging from tears of joy to wails of insanity, as people just can't understand how to laugh at the funny clowns and they just have to overanalyze everything. I also think it's funny that there was an attempt made at some point theoretically to entertain orcs and they just did not care. It is a great honor, as many Harlequins out there have access to damn near every play in history. And will play all of them for every race to see. This kind of leads them to being an Eldar equivalent of like a remembrancer class, something that you find in the Great Crusade. Being able to remember and through tradition pass on the history of the race. But there is one tale they will never share with any race outside of their own, simply referred to as the Dance. It is the tale of how Eldar fell to Slash. It is considered the most personal and most important of their plays, as it is only to be performed in private members of their own species. The craft rules weep at the memory of what once was and how horrible things got. The Exodites take pride in the simpler lifestyle that they are going through now. Even the Drukhari, who canonically hate remembering the fall and hate damn near anything involving not torturing people, do feel a bit of nostalgic melancholy over the performance of the dance. But this is kind of where we have to discuss a bit of the weirder cultural things that they have. I know this entire section is been about the culture, but I mentioned before that troops of Harlequins often have specialized roles to play. Some shift their roles from time to time, some are static. It just depends on what plays they're most well known to. The actors involved with roles depending on the masks, and also depending on what is needed. So each one is incredibly important for that part, but none are more important, especially to that performance of the dance, than that of Solitaire. Because, well, you can't have a play about Slanesh without Slanesh. Solitaires are probably selected by Tegarak, and they are actors who will help Slanesh, but as I mentioned, Harlequins take their roles very seriously. Thus, Solitaires actually have some kind of tenuous or other with the Dark Prince. Usually it's implied that when they die, their souls do go through Slanesh, but this gives them a level of power that, as yet, most people don't understand outside of the Harlequins. Hell, Harlequin fans don't even really have a consensus, because sometimes the Solitaires in their discussions are on par with Primarch, and sometimes the Solitaire is just a really, really powerful Harlequin. No one can really agree. I think it's more they have Primarch level agility and weapons as well as gear and an incredibly strong psychic power, but it's still an Eldar, so if you shoot them in the head, they die pretty much quickly. Though there is the fan theory that they are also kind of like Kagarakian demons of a sort. Like, basically, they are a physical extension of Kagarak, the Laughing God, because Slanesh thinks they are just an Eldar, so when they die, the grinning mask slowly comes into frame to stab Slanesh when they try and claim that spirit with a funny Chris dagger or something. But I digress. There are numerous different and interesting ranks of the Harlequins that, although are important, they aren't really as important as the Solitaire, nor as feared. Well, you do have the Death Jester, which is awesome. They're terrifying, but one of my favorite models in the game. A Harlequin with probably the bleakest sense of humor is usually appointed as a Death Jester, and when I say their sense of humor is bleak, I mean very fucking bleak. I'm talking like kill your entire platoon, leaving you alive only to wake up standing in front of you and whisper, "They'll never believe you," then disappearing into the mists. It's only then that you realize that they somehow found a way to replace both your arms and your legs with matching arms from members of your platoon. perfectly. Like, there's no sutures or anything, and they work perfectly, and you're just confused for the rest of your life. They think that shit's funny as hell. Oh, and also they have a Shrieker cannon, which is best described as a gun that kills you. I mean, if you get nicked by this, not even hurt or killed, the chemicals that coat it, okay, they usually just end up killing you in as violent a way as humanly possible, but there's a whole wacky mess of things that can happen, ranging from making you shit your pants immediately, all the way to you exploding into gory chunks. Depends on the mood of the jester that day, really. Then you have the Shadow Seers, who are incredibly important. They tie into the next major segment of this video as we wrap up, and that's basically just how the Harlequins fight in the various different masks. In short, the Shadow Seers have been described as being able to see the next few pages of the script in regards to the future. They are the Farseers of the Harlequins, but are also kind of massive dicks that when they fight, it's just not fun at all. Like, you could fight an orc and have a great time just because it's just a normal fight, they're just stronger than you. But fighting a Shadow Seer is like trying to grab smoke. They use hallucination, gas grenades, illusions, psychic abilities to make you see shit that's not there. And then eventually, just good old turning invisible to nothing personnel kid you from behind with some kind of evil knife that turns your insides into soup. Having a blank mask and never removing said mask, outside of, you know, Harlequins seeing their face, the design is pretty solid. So let's get into the soup weapon that I was referring to and just kind of discuss their weapons now before going into the masks and wrapping this whole thing up, shall we? The war gear and kit of the Harlequins is kind of crazy. I know there is a lot of memes out there about the Harlequins kiss, but for those who don't know, the Harlequins really do likes them the punching daggers quite a lot. And the most extreme version of that is kind of in the same vein of the weapon that, like, the warp spiders use. I believe it's called the Death Spinner, where that weapon shoots out a cloud of monomolecular edged wire so thin and so light that it actually floats in the air and just looks like a gray cloud from a distance. And if you try to jog through it, it's kind of like running through razor wire. Well, kind of. It doesn't really tangle you up, more just shreds you into pieces so you look more like a pile of mush. But yeah, so the Harlequin's kiss kind of operates on a similar level of logic, except the wires, to my knowledge, are just a little bit thicker, not by much, and are housed inside of this kind of punch dagger apparatus mounted on the wrist. It connects with you, the hole punches through you, and then it just blasts your insides with razor wire, basically liquefying everything from your brain to your toes on the inside and pulling it back before any blood manages to stick on it. You just kind of slump to the ground as like a bag of goop. It's kind of a bloodless death, but definitely disturbing. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the Harlequin's Embrace, which is the same idea, but instead of going inside of you, it wraps around you and then shreds you into gory chunks, which I'd assume is used by Harlequin masks that probably have a lot of red outfits at base, because getting the stains out would be murder. In a weird way, these clowns are kind of shock troops. They perform in ways that demoralize, terrify, and humiliate their foes. So all their tactics, all their weapons, and all their war gear is based around that. The Harlequin's Caress is a super unwieldy weapon only used by the Solitaire, and it basically just ignores armor, or anything really. Kind of like the Canoptic Wraiths that Necron use. They have this ability to phase through things and kind of selectively rephase back into reality at will so that they can repair cabling in Necron tomb worlds, or cut you in half by ignoring your armor. The Harlequin's Caress can be used to go through a Space Marine's helmet and give their brain a nice massage. They have hallucinogenic grenades, psychic amplifiers that act similar to the death masks of the Sanguinary Guard, where just being near a Harlequin makes you nervous. This, all paired with their grace and constant motion, makes most normal human beings horrified of them. But I can't help but feel some of you freaks out there would be aroused. You disgust me. To end this video off, I'm going to cover a few of the masks, just some ones I thought were either incredibly important or the ones that I think are the coolest and you should give a look into because they're just weird and fun. So starting off, let's probably go with one of the most popular ones, and that is the Mask of the Midnight Sorrow. Remember how I mentioned that the most important of all the performances of the Harlequin is one simply referred to as the dance. Well, the Harlequins of the Midnight Sorrow, much like every 25-year-old dude who got an English degree in college, develops an obsession with Blood Meridian. The Mask of the Midnight Sorrow is obsessed with the dance, embodying the performance so much that many of their members forget who they once were, favoring simply being seen as the role they play. This constant repetition of the same performance has kind of driven them to a form of insanity. See, revisiting traumatic instances can be good to give you perspective and also, exposure therapy. It works. Forcing yourself to relive it over and over again is akin to the man who survived a car crash only to listen to the voice of his dead wife on loop every night through the voicemail